State Farm and DJ Dramos from Life as a Gringo know making smarter financial moves today secures your financial freedom for a successful tomorrow.
Now we have a level of privilege that our parents never had. So what do we do with it, right? How do we utilize the opportunities that we have that they don't, right? And a lot of that is educating ourselves on how to not make the same mistakes they did.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. State Farm, proud sponsor of My Cultura Podcast Network.
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Cartoons were present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short, but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, presented by two guys who lost a fight to a motorboat. I'm one of your hosts, Bob Mackey by day, One Face by night, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Henry Gilbert, and the mayor has been raking me over the coals to bring in this podcast.
And this month's podcast is all about the Batman Caped Crusader episode, The Killer Inside Me.
And for the record, the other guy may not want to kill you, but I sure as hell do.
And yes, we are back with another modern cartoon. We do those sometimes. And this is really a follow-up to last month's X-Men 97 podcast, because on this episode, we're covering another reboot of a 90s superhero cartoon. In this case, it is the spiritual reboot of Batman, the animated series, which we have covered a lot of on our Patreon. By the way, if you want to hear us talk about Batman, the animated series, well, I've got a bargain for you. For $5 a month, you just sign up for the Patreon. We've covered like 20 episodes at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. I just wanted to get that out of the way because we have talked a lot about Batman over the past, 7 years. We've covered Mask of the Phantasm. We've covered the Batman Superman movie. We've covered the Batman Beyond movie. We are way into talking about Batman on What a Cartoon.
Yeah, those are at the $10 a month level on What a Cartoon movie, too. So, if you really want all of the Batman animated series discussion we've done, well, you know what you got to do at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
Don't be two-faced. Give us your money. I don't know if that worked. But anyhow, this podcast is going live precisely 1 month after the series debut, so this could be the quickest turnaround we've ever had on What a Cartoon outside of something like Disenchantment. So that's how excited we are. I scheduled this episode before the series even aired. It could have been bad. We could be talking about a bad cartoon. Instead, we're talking about a perfectly good cartoon, and I'm excited to go over Batman Caped Crusader. I do want to say, though, there will be spoilers for the entire season because this is episode 9 we're covering. So please watch the final episode if you haven't already, and please watch the rest. There is a story running throughout that is paying off in these last two. We don't want to spoil anything for you folks out there.
Yeah, it's a great full season story, and the episodes do work episodic-ish, but it has a full season arc that I think is really well done. That's how the show grew on me so much, by how well done that season arc is. And what funny timing, Bob, you mentioned how like both Batman the Animated Series and X-Men the Animated Series debuted in 1992 on the Fox Kids Network, and then in the same year of 2024, they get new successor shows. One is a direct continuation, and the other is a more spiritual continuation.
Yeah, like a reimagining of certain elements from the old show. But I mean, this is generally the place that we talk about our relationship with the subject matter, but it's a month old. So we could just say we watched it and we're here today, 1 month older. So instead, I want to open with a general discussion of our thoughts on the series. And again, there will be spoilers, just, I don't know, like 10, 15 minutes about how we feel about it. I will start things off by saying I would give this series on the classic bad American grading scale somewhere between a B- to a B. I'm not completely pleased with it, although I do enjoy it. I think the writing is incredibly solid. I think it's the best part, and I don't like the serialized storytelling, but I like the lighter touch here. If it was all about episode-to-episode cliffhangers telling one long story throughout, I would be really turned off. But instead, we have 8 episodes about 8 different villains and then a two-phase two-parter at the end, and I do like that part a lot. I will say my one small issue with the series, and by small I mean big, is that at times it looks bad. And I'm going to be frank, it does look like a bad, cheap show sometimes, which is not what your Batman the Animated Series successor should look like. I hope they get more money for the next 10 episodes. I don't think they will, but I was taken aback, again, by how cheap the show looks in certain scenes when certain things are happening. And we'll discuss that throughout this episode, but I think that is the biggest downfall of this series, where X-Men 97 came back looking better than X-Men 92 ever did. This is several steps down, and if you're a fan of the original show, you are definitely going to notice. I am walking into this knowing that there's no way they could have met that standard of the 90s, but it falls so short. I feel like that is one thing they really need to work on if this series will continue, if they want to keep my interest. That's just some general opening thoughts, but in general, I am pleased with this, and I'm excited to watch more.
You know, I totally agree with you on how it looks and the budget-wise issue I think it has. Though I think I was lighter on it during the watching of it because at this same time I'm watching a DC adaptation that HBO Max decided to keep, Kite Man Hell Yeah, which looks cheaper than this show, but because it's a comedy, I think people cut it more of slack than this is a dramatic story. So when I see this, I'm like, oh, you know, this is a bump up from Kite Man Hell Yeah. This looks pretty all right.
Yeah, I guess it could look worse, but I mean, I'm trying to grade on a curve here, and in general, I want it to look better. But any other thoughts about the series as a whole? I think we watched it in different ways. I think you binged watched it, and I was more like one episode every couple of days for 2 weeks, just sitting and thinking. But maybe you had a different experience than me, just going through all of it in a weekend.
Yeah, I had a couple trips planned this month that I was like, oh, I can't really stretch this out. Let me do it over a weekend. And it also, though, didn't feel like homework. There's sometimes where I binge a whole season of something, and it does feel like, all right, gotta watch the next one. This was more of like, oh, I look forward to watching the next one. Where's this going to go next? And I do wish I had a little slower burn on it, though. That is normally how I prefer watching things. But I think the overarching story worked good for me in that, and I liked how they could build with characters like Harley Quinn, especially. I really liked her story, and also even the tension between Gordon and Barbara, especially, and I liked how they dealt with Renee Montoya. This had a lot of the stuff I liked in the comics by head writer Ed Brubaker. And I also do think that I'd seen so many other attempts by Bruce Timm and James Tucker, especially of trying to recapture or do a successor to Batman the Animated Series, say the Batman and Harley movie, for example. I felt like this was a better attempt at that, where they, instead of like, let's give people more of the things and more of the indulgence, like almost to a fault, but I felt like this was so much more like contained. They're like, we can't include every character we've always wanted. We can't, like, this Batman's the only superhero. It is so specifically in one time period. We're holding back on the number of villains we're going to show in this and how many classic villains we're going to use. Like, it felt like restraint in a good way, as opposed to so much fan service they've done in so many other Tim creations.
Yeah, I think there are two extremes when it comes to fan service, and you did say it holds back to a fault sometimes, and that was another minor issue I had with this, in that sometimes it holds back so much that it can feel a little dull. I feel like it's trying to not be trying to keep things very grim and serious and sober, to the point where it at times can be a little stiff and dull, and maybe the stiffness is just the animation quality coming through. But my thing was, and this is just a point I've made before, I hate, by the way, spoilers for the whole series, the Joker tease really angered up my blood. This is like the third or fourth Batman thing to do this, and it's such an expected thing. I would have loved if it's, okay, first episode Joker, there, we got that out of the way, now let's go see what else is happening in this show. I I'm still going to watch more of it, of course, but we don't. I just watched the first Batman movie, the Burton one, not the first one, but the first Burton one, and I love how it's like first movie, Joker, he's here, we kill him, the end, boom, new villains, let's move on. I love that attitude. We can't have that anymore, but. Yeah, I think for the most part, it works in the series. It works for the series for the best, the holding back. But sometimes I'm just like, give me a little something more.
Well, I bet you the second season, if they make it, they're gonna be a little more giving with that fan service for sure. But I have been given so much fan service, and X-Men '97 was so much fan service, and I loved every second of it. But it was a different flavor to feel like, oh, I'm noticing restraint by the writers like that. Though there is an entire not that there isn't fan service in it. There's an entire episode with like 4 different Robins that are like winking at you like, huh, Timmy? You know, Timmy? And oh, Dickie. Who could that be? Oh, no, sorry, Jace, as opposed to Carrie and Steffi. All the ones, as if you're a dork, they're Robins, but otherwise it's just fun. It doesn't detract from the story, though, I don't think.
Well, in terms of holding back, more about that, I feel like the writing is really good in that respect because it's not written like a modern show. It is written like a film noir movie. I feel like all the dialogue is run through the noirifier, a.k.a. Ed Brubaker.
Yes.
And he makes it all sound period specific. I think they worked really hard on that, and we don't get the modern joke or modern dialogue setups that we hear in so many modern things. It just feels like out of the past, and I think they really worked hard on that. As someone who enjoys old media, old crime novels, old movies, I feel like it is working even harder than the original series did at conveying that sort of effect.
Oh, sure. I totally agree.
But yeah, those are our opening thoughts. We'll discuss this more as we get into the episode in question. But first, let's talk about the history of Batman Cape Crusader. So I want to say up front, there wasn't as much pomp and circumstance behind the release of this series, especially when compared to X-Men 97, because it was made for something else and then bought by a different thing and then just kind of thrown haphazardly onto the platform, and then we're going to see more of it, I guess. But yeah, it just is one of those things that came and went in a weekend. So there wasn't a lot behind it outside of some interviews. So I've scraped together as much as I possibly could. There's a really good Animation Magazine interview with Bruce Timm and James Tucker, as well as an Emmys.com interview with the two. So I'm mostly pulling from those two sources because they're very long and very comprehensive interviews. And I'm sure they will be doing more press but when the second order of episodes comes out. So I want to get into this by saying we don't need to know about Batman. Again, you know who Batman is. I don't need to tell you. Or the animated series. Again, we'll gladly take your money if you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons and sign up and listen to our Batman the Animated Series podcast. But I'm going into this thinking you know what this is and who these people are. And of course, this all starts with a little guy named Bruce Timm. We all know him very well. He's one of the key figures behind Batman the Animated Series and so much DC animation over the years. And he's instrumental to those projects and, of course, this one. He's the main guy here on this project. And the story goes that Warner Brothers pitched the idea of more Batman the Animated Series to Timm, and surprisingly, Timm wasn't very keen on the idea. It was the last thing he ever wanted to do. In fact, it was weird to hear this, at least from my perspective, but Justice League was the show he actually wanted to revisit because he felt like a lot more could have been done with the format. So if you're wondering why it took so long to get a spiritual successor to Batman the Animated Series, it's all on Bruce Timm. He did not want to touch it again for many reasons. One of them is that it's everyone's favorite version of Batman, and he knew he could never measure up to the show he made that long ago. And I think when we covered Superman, the story was all the Batman people were running out of Batman stories, so they were kind of happy to be done with Batman and to move on to Superman. Was that correct?
Yeah, though they also were worried that like Superman clearly was not as like engaging as Batman for viewers, but they liked the challenge of Superman. And I think too they got so into the DC universe. Like that definitely came through in my Justice League research that like they just loved, especially in Justice League Unlimited. It was such an open format. I can see why he would be excited to get back to it because really it works for anything. You you can do a big story of like a 2-parter or a 3-parter. All the major heroes of the main Justice League are there. But you can also just do a one-off episode where like Captain Atom, Green Arrow, and Supergirl team up and they solve a problem on their own. Or you're just with the Question the entire episode and he's investigating Lex Luthor. Like, it offered so much variety and lets you play with every toy in the toy box you can, that going back to just Batman, I could see seems a little plain by comparison. And then on top of that, the expectation of like, okay, we know that you've been doing all these other, like, there have been so many Batman things Bruce Timm and his collaborators have been doing for 30 years now, but the prestige of, we're doing Batman the Animated Series season 5 or whatever you'd call it, that has such high expectations that probably could never be matched unless they had a way bigger budget.
Yeah, in a way, I understand why he wanted to shy away from this. But after being pitched this by Warner Brothers, he reflected on the idea of more Batman the Animated Series, along with someone we'll talk about soon. Someone was in the room brainstorming with him. And Tim slowly realized, well, I had a true vision for Batman the Animated Series, but it was compromised by a number of things. The two key things being it has to be for children and it has to sell toys. And my original pitch for the show really got away from me. So he saw this as a way to deliver on the show he wanted to make for Fox back in the 90s, but couldn't. They got away with a lot of stuff, but there still had to be kid-friendly elements in the original animated series.
Well, I mean, this show, yeah, it's interesting how this show feels more adult, but also not, again, like, say, in the last Killing Joke adaptation they did, that is R-rated Batman, and honestly, I was very disappointed by it. So I like how this show finds like a PG-13 adult version of it instead of just going like, yeah, finally, it's R-rated, blood everywhere, sex, all that stuff.
Yeah, watching this very close, having, watched the other cartoon very close recently, I noticed there are very few things they're getting away with here that they couldn't sneak into the original series. We can actually see characters drink. We can actually see certain violent acts happen, like Batman punching someone in the face. But I could see them easily rewriting maybe 5% of each episode and making these into original episodes of the Fox series. The thing I didn't want this to be was to be as vulgar as something like Harley Quinn. I mean, that fits for that character, but I didn't want there to be F words and graphic violence and all that stuff. This does feel more like the original series, tweaked up a tiny bit more, but it's in line with like the noir movies it's trying to evoke the same ideas from. So yes, here's a quote from Tim about Batman. Quote, "Batman's not just scary looking with his bat costume, but he's odd, personality-wise. He's not friendly, he's very remote, he doesn't talk much. That was the version I pitched to writers, but everyone had a hard time wrapping their heads around that character. They eventually made Batman more human than I would have liked." So that's his thoughts about the original series. And what I like about this new Batman show is that it features even less Batman content than the animated series. And we covered several episodes of the animated series where Batman makes an appearance for the first time in the second act. So Batman is a emotionally distant character, and he's even a distant character in this show because he just isn't around very much. And it's more like telling stories about Gotham where Batman intervenes occasionally to move the plot along. There is like one reference or one episode that deals with his parents very lightly. We're not really dealing with Batman and what's going on with him internally in this series because he is just pushing everyone away and he's all about getting the job done.
He is a markedly reserved Batman. Yeah, that we can see when we covered the very first episode of the animated series on Leather Wings, you can see that vision of Bruce they have there of like, Bruce is a phony. It's him trying to act like a normal guy. And when he's really Batman, he's actually a very silent dude who just goes like, yes, that's right. Like he so rarely even has like a funny line to say. And this Batman is that even more so to the fact that like the one guy he was nice with in the old show is now the entire time he's like, Pennyworth, shut up. Like he just like doesn't give Alfred anything and calls him by his last name.
Yeah, and in this episode, he takes a friend out for dinner and triggers a mental breakdown because he's trying to get information out of him about crimes.
Yeah, he's a jerk, and a distant jerk who is rarely even has a funny one-liner. Somebody goes like, well, thank you, Batman. And he's just like stone-faced and walks away.
Yeah, he's not very fun. So yeah, he's a distant character. Tim notes the show is shot to make Batman a distant character visually. We rarely get close-ups, and a lot of this came out of Bruce Timm's relationship with Alex Toth, who was the designer of Space Ghost and many other characters. Batman's design in that '90s series really evokes Space Ghost. And Tim and Toth were pen pals, and Toth would whine to Tim about there were too many close-ups in Batman the Animated Series. It wasn't a good look for Batman. It revealed the flaws in the artwork and everything like that. And it took 30 years, but Bruce Timm is finally following Toth's advice. There are very few close-ups of Batman in this show.
Oh, that's cool. I hadn't really noticed that, but that's such a cool background on it that like his one of the artists he looked up to so much out of all of them, and in so many interviews we've read, like he's finally doing something to please Alex Toth up in comic artist heaven.
And I don't know if I prefer this Batman. I don't think it's an improvement. I think it's fun to see a different version. I really love the episodes of the animated series that shows Batman, despite his hard exterior, he has so much empathy, especially for criminals. We're not seeing that here at all. That is not an element of this Batman at all.
Yeah,
he's not comforting anyone.
I think that empathy is more a hallmark of Paul Dini than Bruce Timm. Like, I think Dini brought that a ton to his scripts that come out more through season 1 and then really in season 2. And it doesn't sound like that was what Tim was as into as much with old Bats. So I can see why they lose that here, but that makes it different. Also, too, I mean, that Kevin Conroy, I think, had so much like empathy that came through in Batman that it was hard not to write for it the more they got used to working with him as the performer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Tim had a few other projects in production, but he had to put this one on the back burner because of other things that were happening, things that weren't as good. But then some big wigs get involved, like J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves, director of The Batman. I don't know what they did on this show. No one is telling me. I assume they look things over and were like, yep, that's Batman. But I assume this was we're going to put your name on this and give you a check, and this will help sell the prestige of this show.
Yeah, I can only guess at it, too. This is part of that thing that's been happening more and more lately of a famous person who has nothing to do with cartoons, who works in other mediums, shows up to say, I actually watched a few episodes of Cartoon X or Y growing up. You should make more of it. And then basically they get to be like the famous person who opens the door or who starts the meeting, and you get your nice check. And it's like, I feel like Matt Reeves and J.J. Abrams have their credits so high in this, and you can give them the excuse of like, well, this probably wouldn't have been made if they didn't tell some executive asshole at Warner, hey, I think it's a good idea. We should make more of it. And like that, they get to be the babysitter of the people who actually made the damn thing, Bruce Timm and James Tucker especially.
Yeah, in this case, I think they really lit a fire under Bruce Timm's ass, saying, we're involved, let's make this happen. And in the end, they're executive producers. I'm sure they served the same role Steven Spielberg served on like Tiny Toons or whatever. It just a name we attach to it. They look at things. Their presence makes it so the network backs off on certain ideas. But yeah, that's what their presence is.
The Abrams fingerprints I really can't see in this. Like him, I feel like really was uninvolved. It's just that he for a brief time he was doing multiple DC projects, and then I think almost all got canceled at Warner. Now the Matt Reeves fingerprints from the Batman into this. He did really like the cops, the GCPD, the Gotham City Police in the Batman. They are a major part of it. So I can see a little of that in this Batman show, but that's really it as far as like my guess of like their creative involvement in it for sure.
Yeah, I was really worried about J.J. Abrams' presence on this show because I don't care for what he does, and he frankly wrote one of the worst movies in the past decade with Rise of Skywalker, or whatever the fuck that's called.
No, that's it.
And I feel like he has not suffered enough from writing that movie, one of the most ridiculously stupid movies ever made, one of the worst sequels ever made. I don't know how he escaped. How did he slip out of that one?
He went across the street from Disney to Warner Brothers and got a job there because he's like, well, you still have a lot of quality credits. We'll trust you. But fortunately, it seems like Abrams doesn't have too many projects going on at Warner now after they instead decided to go with James Gunn as the DC boss.
Better choice. So this is when James Tucker gets involved. He is Tim's longtime producing partner. And I'm sure he's come up on previous projects, but he's been working in the world of Warner Brothers Animation since Tasmania, because he was originally a Star Toons guy. He worked at that animation studio. And he's been a producer on an incredible amount of animated Warner Brothers projects, mostly superhero stuff, since the early 2000s. And before the 2010s, he also did a ton of storyboarding on these projects. He still does, though not quite as often, because it's a lot of work, especially as you're becoming an older gentleman. So James Tucker, big Warner Brothers guy. His name is attached to everything. And I believe we have talked about him on Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
He didn't enter the animated series. He was still a little too young for that and working on funny animal cartoons, but he was on the New Adventures of Batman.
Yeah, he when I mentioned him in the Batman Beyond one, where I've noticed he really moved up the ranks of, like he got to write his first episode, I think, of that one, or co-write in board form. But he replied to me on Twitter, like he had listened to the episode, which he liked our Batman Beyond one, but he corrected me that Darwin Cook didn't do as much of the opening as I thought he did. But so yeah, James Tucker, he's pretty active on Twitter, and he has become like these days second to Bruce Timm. Like he's Bruce Timm's like second in command on that stuff, on most of the Timm animated series.
Well, James, if you're listening to this, hello. Thank you. We appreciate
Yes.
your work. He is the lead character designer on this show, and Bruce Timm blames him, in quotes, for this show coming into being because Tim wanted to do more Justice League, and this is when he's talking it over with James. And actually, Warner Brothers is like, why don't you work with James? So he starts talking things over with James Tucker. Tucker keeps going back to Batman. He's dragging Tim back to Batman and saying, oh, isn't there more you wish you could have done with it? And that's what got Tim thinking, yeah, there was the censorship. There were certain stories we couldn't tell. There was them drifting away from my version of Batman. And one of the big ideas that drove the direction of this show is the backdrop of a purely 40s world instead of the pre-World War II inspired era from Batman the Animated Series, where you have computers and televisions and video games. Here, because they're not springboarding off the Burton movies, they can say, no, this is purely a period piece with Batman in it. No one's going to be looking things up on their internet. The Riddler can't have video games, things like that.
The computer is just a clear board that you write on, a map of Gotham City.
Yeah, Batman has a dry erase board. There is no
Yeah.
Bat computer. It's more interesting in that respect. He has fewer tools, a lot fewer gadgets too. I'm not noticing a ton of Batman gadgets in this series as well.
Yeah, no, it's actually pretty rare. He uses much more than like a smoke pellet and the grappling hook. There's not even a bat signal in this. Like so many of the accessories are gone. The one thing they held back on, though, if this is adapting the first couple years of Batman stuff, is his gloves are not purple. They're short gloves, but they're black instead of purple, which is a much better color design, and it fits much more with the color design they have of this world. But it's not being exactly 1938 Batman.
Right. They're doing some cheats, but they're trying to decide on, a time period to stick to, a fuzzy time period. So everybody's on board with Tim's idea of this man of few words Batman and the idea of a show being inspired by film noir and horror movies from the 30s and 40s. And it's obviously a follow-up to the animated series, both in tone and design, but this time around, Tim went for a different approach. Because the series is drawing so much inspiration from 40s media, the design of Batman calls back to his earliest design, where he has tall ears and short gloves and long boots. So this is like you said, this is a stylized version of his earliest appearances, one that works best within the world of the show that they're building. And because they're not having to visually, be in line with the Burton ideas, they can really go their own way.
And I think with the, if the basically Golden Age Batman pre-Robin showing up when they started softening him, in those original ones, it's not like he kills people all the time, but Batman does like shoot guns and kill people. That does happen sometimes in those earliest stories. And I think they use that to great effect in the show again, watch this whole season, listeners. But in the last episode, there is a tense moment of Batman points a gun at somebody. And I was thinking like, oh, if this is going to be real Golden Age OG Batman, he might shoot this guy. I never think Batman's going to shoot somebody in anything if he picks up a gun. But this was one of those moments of like, wow, he might do it.
Yeah, in this show, it seems possible with how twisted and behind an emotional wall he is. And it seems like this show's intent is to zig where the animated series would have zagged. I have a quote from Timm on his redesign of Catwoman, or James Tucker's design of Catwoman. So Timm says, quote, James Tucker and I are both big fans of Golden Age comics, and the farthest away from the beat-ass Catwoman is the early comics version of her. She's got a long skirt and a green cape, and she's got a whip. We settle on this spoiled heiress version of her. She's in it for fun and to steal stuff to fund her lifestyle. So she's more of a screwball comedy character, which is weird in this world, but it makes sense within a 40s framework. She's a lot of fun and one of my favorite characters in the show. And I, Bob Mackey, will say, yeah, that was the funniest episode of this 10-episode run. Just a kooky heiress just trying to steal things because she's bored and she's horribly mismanaging her money, so she actually needs to steal.
And she gets arrested really early, too. I like that. That uncorked another memory of when we talked about James Tucker, when we did the Legends of the Dark Knight episode, because he produced the 50s Batman Dick Sprang segment of that one. Like, that was his, because he loves the, specifically, Dick Sprang, a name of an artist. If you haven't listened to that one, that might sound crazy. I'm talking about Dick Sprang, but James Tucker loved that, which he brought to the Batman Brave and the Bold show that I believe he was the Bruce Timm of on that one.
So alongside James Tucker, another major figure on the show is Ed Brubaker, who is the head writer for these first 10 episodes of what would become a 20-episode order. Apparently, he couldn't return for the next 10 because of the writer's strike and scheduling issues. So he will not be the head writer for the next 10 that we see. But he's a comic writer with, frankly, too many credits to go over here. But he's been attached to a ton of Batman stuff since the early aughts. I know Henry is a big fan. So, Henry, what's going on with Ed Brubaker?
Oh man, yeah, that when I saw he got hired for this and he was going to be the head writer, that took my interest to a whole nother level. It erased any idea of like, oh, instead of J.J. Abrams, like he hired one of my favorite all-time Batman writers. Like I couldn't believe it. But yeah, so Ed Brubaker, he was born in 1966, an Army brat who literally grew up in Guantanamo Bay is one of his stories. Like as a kid, he lived in Guantanamo, which is insane.
It's got more than just a torture place.
And so he gets into comics, but he always loved noir. He was a big dork for comics and grew up with him and his brother reading superhero comics. But then growing up in the 80s, especially Frank Miller, Batman comics, loves those. But he also really loves indie comics like Hate and Love and Rockets. And he actually kind of gets into the indie auto-bio writer-artist comics at first. Like that were some of his first hits. But he really finds critical success working in crime comics. And one of his first things that got noticed, I wouldn't say it was a big hit. It did not sell well, but it was this series, Scene of the Crime, which I have a hardcover collection of it right here, which Brubaker wrote. It's a Dashiell Hammett type thing, except it takes place in then modern day 1997 San Francisco. And it's like the slacker detective, but not corny in that idea. It's a really interesting story.
Yeah, it looked really cool.
It is really cool. I like it. And it's where he works with two artists he will work with a ton in the future, Michael Lark and Sean Phillips. But this does so well, or this gets noticed at DC, that he meets an editor at DC, Mike Carlin, who was working on Batman stuff. And he's telling him, enough of this, grown-up comics. You should be writing superheroes. And then he says, I don't know if I can write superheroes. And Mike Carlin replied to him, if you can write a mystery, you can write Batman.
Batman's a detective.
And so by 2000, he writes his first Batman comic, and he begins a long stint on Batman. I was like 17 when I read my first Ed Brubaker Batman comic. It's nuts to think about now. If I were to direct people to read great runs he did on it, his Catwoman comic with artist Darwin Cook is amazing. I love that whole run. It's so good. He also worked a ton with Greg Rucka, a top Batman scribe who wrote on this show as well. He wrote an episode of this of Cape Crusader. And then their next big thing was with Batman, the Gotham Central series, which is too heavy to pick up. I showed it to you earlier, Bobby.
Yeah, you cannot read that comfortably without a lectern, I think.
But I bring up Gotham Central specifically because so much of the cop stuff in this is in that Gotham Central. It's basically like, what if Law and Order was in Gotham? And it's like a cop procedural where they're figuring out, a mystery while trying to actually beat Batman to the punch because they're like, God, I'm so embarrassed that Batman solves my cases for me. I have to do this first.
Yeah, way more than the animated series. We are always getting the cop point of view on every criminal situation happening here. I mean, maybe Gordon would appear to say, hey, Batman, check out this place, check out that place. But here, it's always like, what's Montoya doing? What's Bullock doing? What's Bullock's pal doing? I wrote his name down. I don't know it offhand.
Oh, Flash. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. What does Barbara Gordon think of this? We're always checking in with them way more than ever before.
I think you spend more time at Gotham Central than you do in the Batcave in this show.
I think so, yeah.
And Renee Montoya is a major character in that too. It's where she came out as a lesbian in that series, which she's out and proud in this show. But yeah, so Brubaker worked on that. He also wrote The Man Who Laughs, which is one of my all-time favorite Joker stories. It was really good with artist Doug Monk. I wanted to grab it just to show again to Bobby. I love it so much. I got it signed by Ed Brubaker. I went to a signing. It was really great. It's really great. And it makes me sad he's not going to be in the second season because the tease at the end of this season of The Joker is the first 2 pages of that comic. And I was like, oh, no, he won't be there to adapt it.
They could just borrow the comic, right?
Yeah, I mean, he has no ownership of it.
Thank God.
Well, that's also, if you know Ed Brubaker, he's probably most famous to you as the co-creator of The Winter Soldier and with Steve Epting, and they adapted that into the movie, which also has led to him being one of the more vocal creators out there to say, I made no money on this. Like Marvel screwed me. The only way he made any money on The Winter Soldier was that he got to have a cameo in that movie with a speaking role, which gave him a small amount of money. Nothing for co-creating the character. But don't feel bad for him because Brubaker, I didn't know this. I did know this. He has been doing tons of amazing comics. He quit Marvel over that Winter Soldier bullshit. He doesn't do any Marvel work anymore for over 10 years now. He does amazing comics, especially with Sean Phillips. Look up all of the stuff he's done, like Criminal, so good. But he has become a TV writer. He wrote on the series Westworld, and he is big with Amazon now. Like he wrote a miniseries called Too Old to Die Young, which sounded like a really interesting series. And now, though, his series Criminal with Sean Phillips has been licensed by Prime to be an entire series, and he's show running that. So I can see why he's too busy for the second season of this show.
They're in the Brubaker business. Yeah, learning more about him, it made me want to read more of his work because I've read very few Batman comics. That was the one superhero comic I would occasionally read when I was still into comics, but I do want to look some of them up. And I found out a fun fact about Brubaker that really explains why he writes the way he does and the kinds of stories he does. So his uncle is John Paxton, who was a Hollywood screenwriter who greatly inspired his comic The Fade Out. And it all comes full circle because John Paxton actually wrote film noir movies in the 40s. So he has film noir in his DNA.
Wow.
And I am a huge sucker for, again, film noir, crime novels from that era. That's why this clicks with me so much, and I'm sure I would like more of his stuff.
You know, it's funny. If you were to read those, his very film noir ones, especially like The Fade Out, that's his most, I'd say. And I definitely think you'd enjoy that. But it might be like how when I watch this show, I can say, oh, they took that from, this is inspired by this lesser known Batman comic. For me, reading those The Fade Out, I just think, oh, this is good. And this is like a general noir pastiche, right? But you might read it and be like, oh, this is a specific Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler character they're referencing here.
I'm appreciating it on a deeper level than you.
But yeah, when they hired him, I saw he said something like, he had contacted Bruce Timm when he heard about this in the news that like, oh, but Batman the Animated Series is one of my all-time favorite shows. Like, it is the Batman for me, and I'll totally take on a freelance script if you've got an opening for it. I would love to. And then he said that Bruce Timm said back to him, would you like to just run the show? Like, you want to be head writer? We need one. But then he said it wasn't that easy, that then he had to jump through a lot of hoops to prove he could be the showrunner or head writer. But yeah, it started out pretty simple of Bruce Timm just going like, oh, you just want to be the head writer?
Well, I did note that there are no returning writers from the original series, which I guess makes sense because they are going for a different tone. But I really wanted one Paul Dini script. I feel like that is an absence. And maybe it's because, again, Paul Dini is the empathetic nerd who wants Batman to hug everybody. But still, he could write something in this tone. I think maybe he's too expensive. Who knows? But I feel like the Timm Dini combination was just such a vital part of the original series. We need something like that in the next order of episodes.
It does seem like Paul Dini is not invited to these parties lately. I don't know why, or if he chooses not to be present. But yeah, it's like they do all these throwbacks, like they don't involve him. He doesn't get a writing. He's a busy writer who's doing stuff on his own. And it's not like he's unemployed. But yes, it is, to me, it feels like something is going unsaid that Paul Dini is not given a writing job on this in any form.
So moving on to other people who worked on the show. Unfortunately, the music can't be composed by Shirley Walker because she went and died in 2006. Boo! So stepping in for her is Frederick Weidman, or Weidman, perhaps. So he's doing an admirable but much more subtle job, I feel, and the music doesn't stand out often. It doesn't rely on the leitmotifs that I like so much, but it's still okay, and I still understand they're doing something different. I really miss the character themes, but I know how that lends to something being more cartoony, more, not subtle, more over the top. So I get it. And his music was growing on me, but it is very much drawing from the same kinds of compositions, but just toning down the melodies a bit from the animated series.
Yeah, the music isn't so noticeable, but I think it sets it's you get a feel like it can set tone and mood and all that. But yeah, you're not having any character enter to a theme like the Joker theme that you can just instantly hum and be like I bet Harley Quinn has a theme, but I can't really think of it.
Yeah.
And they don't use it to tease something.
I will say the music on the original series is a lot better and more effective, but here it's not bad. Here it just feels like it's there and it's doing what music should function to do, but I'm not really noticing it or thinking about it that much. So I think it's all right. And Frederick Weidman, he's composed for a lot of stuff since his career began in the early aughts. He's likely attached to this project, though, because he's composed music for DC superhero animated stuff, including Justice League movies, the Green Lantern series, the Beware the Batman series. By the way, what was that? What was the Beware the Batman? We've talked about this, right?
Yeah, that was the let's do a 3D Bruce Timm show, and it got canceled before it debuted. It technically aired all the episodes, but they canceled it before it was debuted. It's nuts.
I stumbled on that. And I was like, what is that again? I know we talked about it. And then the Weidman's worked on some Batman movies, and he actually won a Daytime Emmy for his work on the Madagascar spinoff series called All Hail King Julian, which inexplicably has 65 episodes. So
yeah, I didn't know there was one other than the Penguins. I knew the Penguins had a spinoff show, but also I'm guessing that lemur character is the King Julian. That's what he's the star of.
Yeah, 65 episodes. So
wow.
There you have it. The people like Madagascar. There's so many spinoffs featuring people that aren't famous in them. None of the famous
characters. I guess
characters.
someday we'll have to do that one too, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe one of these days. Madagascar. By the by, I wanted to point out that the entire soundtrack has been posted to YouTube by Water Tower Music, the official Warner Brothers publishing branch of music. So if you want to listen to his soundtrack for the series, it's all on YouTube for free, illegally. They just put it there. So I pulled some of that for the podcast. I was worried, what music can I use for this? Because I can't get it independently of, the dialogue and the sound effects. But they made it all available. So if you want to listen to it on its own, you can appreciate it more that way, maybe.
That's great.
So you have Bruce Timm. He's making a Batman the Animated Series spiritual sequel. It sounds like a sure thing, doesn't it? Well, let's not forget that streaming networks are very stupid. So I want to go over the timeline of the series. And it's not very long and it's kind of boring, but I want to point out how dumb people are when it comes to what should be a sure thing. So May of 2021, this is announced as a 10-episode series that is going to stream on HBO Max and also air on Cartoon Network. So that's the original plan for this. And then a little over a year later, in August of 2022, we get the announcement that production will continue on the show, but it will not be on HBO Max. Instead, it'll be shopped around to whoever wants it. And again, this series is a sure thing. Warner Brothers is like, nah, you take it. But at least they didn't throw it down the Batgirl hole or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, no, that's a place you don't want to be. It's also where the Coyote versus Acme went to. Yeah, that was when Discovery took over at Warner, and they are instantly billions in debt, and so they're looking to cut whatever thing they can, even though they don't seem to understand that, well, if you finish something, then you release it and it makes money. It doesn't, you spent the money, but they have tax loopholes they can get away with. So yeah, it's, and Batman Caped Crusader fell under that same thing of like, do we really need this on Max? And also, we should call it Max now, not HBO Max.
Yeah, this is when it was being rebranded from, prestige television to a reality trash. So that's what was going on there 2 years ago. And then we fast forward to March of 2023. It's been announced that Amazon has picked up the series, and they also ordered an additional 10 episodes on top of the 10 that were being made for HBO Max. And then it all hits Amazon on August 1st of this year, 2024, and no word when the second season will hit. Probably next year, I'm guessing. Probably on some random day on some random month. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this, but they are working on 10 more, and Ed Brubaker will not be the head writer on those.
Yeah, I after we covered Invincible, I can see why Prime, if they're going all the way, Prime Video or Amazon, however you want to put it, that they learned their lesson with Invincible, where when they renewed Invincible, it took them nearly 2 years to get a second season ready. If a year ago they decided we want to have the Batman Caped Crusader show, then they need to get a second season right now, just in case it's a hit.
Yeah, it seems like we might see this sooner than later based on when they ordered it, but who knows? I'm looking forward to more, obviously. So that's the little timeline of this and how we were so mad when HBO Max just washed their hands of this. Like, who wants this crap? Let's bring on more, what is it? Fuck Island or whatever they show on that streaming network.
I know it's all the same fucking thing, and like the good thing is when it at least gets to go somewhere else. And yeah, it seemed like Batman was a better bet for them to sell something than Higher Concept or things starring women. But so like this last year, Prime also bought the rights to Merry Little Batman, or the Batman Christmas movie that is made entirely for kids, and it is a kid goofy Batman thing. Though it was fun. It's the total opposite of this, where they've now turned Bruce Wayne into a really nice father, is who he is. He's not cold or distant at all.
Did that come out for the holidays or after the holidays?
That was out in December, yeah.
Okay, I'll watch it this Christmas. So I want to talk about the animation that I've been complaining about. I do want to say I'm not blaming anyone personally for my dislike of this. It feels like they went to studios that don't normally do this kind of thing, and they weren't given a lot of money. So it's not like anyone was lazy or anything, and I feel like everyone was working very hard. But the work overseas is being done by two Korean studios that I've never heard before. Studio IAM, or IAM, however you want to say that, and Studio Greta. So Studio Greta animated the episode we're covering today, and I actually can't find any information about them. Oh. So they could be a new operation. They have worked with the other studio attached to this project, which is Studio IAM. And Studio IAM has largely done subcontracting work for Studio Mir. And I believe we have talked about Studio Mir elsewhere. So here are some things that IAM have worked on. They've worked on Velma. They've worked on Aquaman, King of Atlantis, and Mortal Kombat Legends Cage Match. So not a great pedigree for these studios. One seems like a subcontractor, and one seems like it's a subcontractor of a subcontractor that's just kind of getting on its feet to be a proper studio. Yeah. And I was reading the the Animation Magazine article, and the quote is, Tim and Tucker got some of the highest tier Korean animation studios to work on this show. And I looked into it. I was like, no. This is not Rough Draft Studios. This is not other things I know do good work. These are people I've never heard of, I think, working for very cheap because HBO Max gave this thing no money. And that's ultimately my biggest disappointment with this. Just little things I noticed that bug me in this show. Like some of the worst scenes are not even action. It's just characters standing around and talking. If you watch these scenes closely, characters are often in their stock like standing positions, and I'm like sitting upright in my chair to show Henry, where their hands are just like flat at their sides. It's almost like they're T-posing in the scenes. And I feel like this is not how it works, of course, but someone was like clicking and dragging the character assets into the scene and they had no time to pose them. And I feel like when you're working with hand-drawn art, it doesn't take much more work to have a character posed in a scene uniquely, or sitting or leaning or something like that. Here, there are so many scenes. It looks like a cheap video game where the characters are standing, just staring, and having their hands planted flat at their sides with their feet planted flat on the floor, pointing just forwards in one direction. Those feel the cheapest. What also feels cheap is Batman's car that he got from a GameCube game. All the cars in this look like cel-shaded animation from, I don't know, 1998, 2002. I've watched things that Japan has made, like Sandland and other shows like that. You can do CGI animation and fake 2D much better than this. There is no excuse. Little things like this really irk me with a show that should not look this bad at times. Sometimes when they have to do unique assets for a scene, it does look good, but then I think, why can't the rest of the show look this good? And it all comes down to money.
Yeah, that the shows you named from the main studio on this, like Velma, the Aquaman cartoon, and that Mortal Kombat cartoon, those are so totally different from this, not restrained at all like they're big comedies or colorful silly action shows. So it just sounds like they work a lot with Warner, so they can be counted on for deliverables from Warner, but they probably fit a certain budget thing. And it's crazy to say this when 30 years ago, it was Marvel that goes the cheap way. Like they license it to Haim Saban for X-Men, and then Haim Saban licensed it to the lower tier than Batman people. Now this time, you're talking about studios that worked for Studio Mir, MIR. That was the main studio for X-Men 97. So it's like, oh, you guys couldn't get MIR like how X-Men did, and you had to settle for these. And I definitely know a lot of the companies. I don't know if this is true for these two you named for this show, but so many South Korean animation companies usually are just like spun off top level people at one of the side studios. They start their own studio and undercut their old bosses of like, oh, I have all these contacts now, I'm going to undercut you guys. And I don't know, I fear the quality wise, maybe that is what happened, that it's like, we can do it for cheaper and it'll look just as good. And you get what you get in this show.
Yeah, I just feel, I totally agree with all of that. And I feel that with a show this talky, I think part of what makes it kind of dull is that you're often staring at the same, what I feel are just assets. Just like, well, here we drag the Montoya asset. She's going to talk to the Barbara Gordon asset for a while. But then sometimes when you like, oh, here's a unique drawing or, asset creation of them sitting at a table or in a car, you're like, okay, this is visually interesting, but so much of it isn't. And I think it all comes down to money. And I wonder how that factored into how this was storyboarded and everything, where they told, well, limit your angles on a scene, limit character actions when you're doing this sort of thing. It feels like it was a top-down thing because it wouldn't be this visually dull unless they were told their limits up front, I feel.
And I think the layout, like we know 30 years ago that like Bruce Timm and his team didn't want to settle for like boring layout of a conversation scene. They wanted dynamic poses, even if they're not going to move a bunch. They wanted like, this is a boring way to pose a scene. But yeah, when you settle for boring talking shots of just two characters looking at each other, that feels like you're settling for just time and money is what stopped that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but if there was a dialogue scene in the animated series, of course, sometimes they would take shortcuts and they wouldn't be very ambitious. But oftentimes it's like, okay, here's the character, here's a two-shot of the characters, here's a shot from above, here's a shot through the window. They're just trying to keep angles moving around because you're a kid watching it and you're like, well, these people are talking and it's kind of boring. So it's like, well, here are different shots of them, but here it just feels like you're kind of looking at a play. And the scene hasn't ended yet. It's just like you're looking at the proscenium staging and everything. I really hope they get more money for the next 10. I don't think they will, but who knows? Surprise me. And this is something stupid to complain about, but no title cards, really. I mean, come on. I know we lost that battle in the 90s, but you got to give me those. You got to put one artist on staff to do 10 pieces of art. Recruit online if you need to. It's going to add like I don't know, $5,000 to your budget maybe if you pay the person fairly, or I mean if you undercut them. But I feel like that's what they would pay people to do 10 title cards.
Yeah, man, I hope Prime. I hope that if they have a little more financial incentive in the second season, maybe they can open up the pocketbook a little bit more for this than I mean. Again, I don't blame Tim or Tucker or any of the other creatives on this. Like they're adding cash. They were making it for Max at first, which is slashing budgets on every single part of their machine.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what Tim candidly thinks about the final product, because we listened to the Batman the Animated Series commentaries. We know what a stickler he was for things that we even thought looked good. So I wonder when this comes back to him, what does he think? Although he's been in the animation business for so long, maybe this is just what he expects now at this time in his life and at this time in the industry's life.
That the TMSB studio not looking so shabby now, huh, Bruce?
He wishes he had that. So yeah, that my another complaint about the show. I just wanted to bring up that here's who they're relying on, and they seem like new talents who aren't used to doing shows on their own, seemingly just subcontracting. And you got to start somewhere, but I wish they didn't start here. They should have started on some show I didn't really want to watch, so I didn't have to suffer through the growing pains of an animation studio figuring out how to do this kind of thing. And I wanted to go over the cast because there's a lot of big voices. I want to cover everyone in this episode, though we can cover some of the bigger guests afterwards. And a lot of these folks are kind of new to me, including the voice of Batman, who is Hamish Linklater, a great name, playing Batman and Bruce Wayne. He sounds familiar. I honestly didn't know who he was. Apparently, he was the male lead on the sitcom The New Adventures of Old Christine. And recently he's had major roles in things like Legion, which is a superhero thing, and the very critically acclaimed series Midnight Mass. It's a Netflix show everyone seems to love. I do like this performance. I feel like he is largely basing it on Kevin Conroy's performance, so it's not really a new take. That's a slight complaint there, but I do like what he's doing. I do want to see where the voice grows from here, but it seems like he's starting with Conroy.
It feels like a colder Conroy as he's slowly finding himself in it. But yeah, I when you said Legion, I was like, oh, okay, I do remember that. I watched the first season of that. I missed the second. It was good. It's by the creator of the Fargo TV show, so you might like it too, Bob. But
okay.
Yeah. But no, I as far as casting for him and some other people in this go, I had to double check that, like, oh yeah, Andrea Romano did not do casting and direction on this. She's retired. She's had an amazing career. She shouldn't still be working until her like 80s. But I think that some of the casting has the feel of the Romano way of thinking, which was don't, cast people who are not cartoon voices. Don't get Rob Paulson or whatever. And we love Rob Paulson, but don't get him. Get a character actor who brings a interesting voice to the show. So as far as like career up to this point, it's not unlike Kevin Conroy's small but somewhat successful career as an actor before he became Bruce Wayne in 92.
Yeah, a lot of these actors, it's going to be me saying, well, I don't know what to tell you. They've had 800 roles, but you don't know who they are, even though you've probably seen them before. Like Michelle Bonilla as Renee Montoya. She's a character actor with roles dating back to 1995. Her first role was on Silk Stockings. And apparently she was a minor character on ER for like 9 years of that show. But outside of that, it's basically one-off appearances for like, we need a Mexican-American character. You're one of the many people we'll cast for this role. So that's kind of what her career has been like. But she does a great job, and I know Montoya debuted in the comics, but was created for the animated series to sort of diversify the cast even back then.
Yeah. Back then they were like, oh, this is all white guys. We could use some diversity in this. And then the writer, Greg Rucka, really, really liked her a lot and made her like his special project when she came over into the comics. And he's the one who wrote her to be gay, which also I think the voice actress for this is a queer Latina as well, which is fitting casting. And that's why Rucka wrote the Montoya feature episode of this season, because he is It's not exactly like Paul Dini to Harley Quinn, but it's close, I'd say, for him and
Okay.
Montoya.
Yeah, she gets a lot more to do in this series. She was barely featured in the animated series, but it was just nice to see like a non-white person on the screen back then. She's getting a lot more to do now. A guy we all know very well, John DiMaggio as Harvey Bullock. His design is very close to the animated series, but of course, this is the voice of Bender. We love John DiMaggio. He doesn't sound like Bender in this role. He's doing just a gruff New Yorker voice. And to be fair, I think John DiMaggio could play Bullock in real life. He's not quite as big, but I think like he could pull this off if there was another live action Bullock. They could just cast him, and he'd feel really authentic, I think.
Yeah, they don't play this Bullock too different from what you expect on Bullock. Like it's just in the animated series and most Bullock appearances in the comics, he's more written as like, well, he's a jerk, but he's got his heart's in the right place. Like he's a gross slob, but he knows what's good and what's bad. But this Bullock is like, he's a gross slob, and also he will kill people for money.
Yeah, he's just a murderer. He's not. There's no heart of gold here. There's no heartwarming bullet for Bullock story to be told here.
No way.
So yeah, that's John DiMaggio. Listen to all 75 episodes of Talking Futurama with more to come if you want to learn more about John DiMaggio. And then again, it's one of these character actor guys, Eric Morgan Stewart as Commissioner Gordon. Actually, he does not have a ton of roles, and then when you do see him with a role, it's something like Stairway Guard in an episode of Deep Space Nine. So just a guy getting bit parts, treading the boards, doing what it takes to doing what he needs to do to be an actor, but this seems to be the most substantial role he's had in 36 years of acting. So I will give him a non-patronizing good for you, buddy.
Yeah. That feels more like the Romano style of casting, of finding just somebody who has a million small roles, but whose voice is just right for it. And it fits with it's not, they're not asking him to do an impression, but it does fit with Matt Reeves' characterization of Commissioner Gordon as he was played by Jeffrey Wright in The Batman. And not just that he is an African-American Commissioner Gordon, but the same kind of like by the book type guy, and his voice is kind of similar to what Jeffrey Wright does in The Batman.
Yeah, having him be a black character made me feel like they're keeping it in line with the Reeves storytelling, although his relationship with Batman is different in this. Batman is his friend who freaks out too much in the Batman movie. In there's no real close connection there in these first 10 episodes.
That is something I really did like in the show. They have Commissioner Gordon as a black police commissioner in the 40s, which almost never happened in a time as racist as that, or maybe never happened. And you have Renee Montoya, a Latina at a high level like detective job in it. And it if you're trying to say this is like, oh, this is really set in the 40s, you might be thinking America was too racist to allow these things then. But they have a line of like, I forget which episode, but Commissioner Gordon is reminding Montoya about the precarity of their positions, about how they can't take a risk because they're going to be judged much harsher because people think they just got the job for diversity reasons.
Yeah, I mean, the period detail I'm happy they don't include is segregation and things like that. Yes. It feels like this is a different reality where you just have to accept, yes, this part is not realistic, but it'd be a real bummer if we had to also deal with these issues and watch our Batman show at the same time. I think it's just too heavy to deal with for something like this.
Well, same with the queer stuff in this show, that it doesn't feel, it feels more silent. Like Renee is not walking down the streets holding hands with when she's on a date with Harley Quinn, or when there's one in the Clayface episode, a guy says, oh, she's great, she's just not my type, and you're supposed to assume like, oh, he's a closeted gay actor in Hollywood.
So moving on, we have Gary Anthony Williams as Flass. So he played Uncle Ruckus on the Boondocks, but I'll know him forever for playing Stevie's father on Malcolm in the Middle. Later in the series, he becomes a regular character, one of the Hal Pals.
He's
but
great.
That's who I remember him as. You've seen him in a ton of things before, and you've heard his voice before. And I noticed that in the credits, we get like 3 character credits, like this character created by this. Flass is Frank Miller and Mazzucchelli, some guy named Mazzucchelli. Where does Flass come
David
from?
Mazzucchelli. Oh yeah, that's how I remember his name is Flass, because he's a very memorable character in Batman Year One by Miller and Mazzucchelli, and that he is Gordon's partner, and it's he's the real Donnie Don't for Detective Gordon there, because he's a dirty cop who beats up people and steals money and kills people. And this, though he isn't the snazzy dresser that they have Flash be in this series.
Yeah, I didn't know where he came from, so thank you. And we also have longtime Batman associate Dietrich Bader as Harvey Dent and Two-Face. So yeah, we know him as the lovable Oswald Lee Harvey from the Drew Carey Show, which, by the way, is just streaming now for the very first time. Apparently there were so many music rights issues that it just was never streaming. Now it's streaming on Plex. So start up your Plex accounts, because Plex is not just for stealing anymore.
I'm doing this, man. I'm going to watch that. Yeah, but he's become quite a voice. We've talked about him a few times and on previous What a Cartoons, haven't we?
Yes, he's played Batman in a number of animated productions, most notably Harley Quinn and Batman the Brave and the Bold. And, of course, you've seen him in everything from the Beverly Hillbillies movie to Office Space. He's just such a notable comedic actor.
Yeah, it is a clever casting choice to have a previous Batman play Harvey Dent, who, you know, if you have an unscarred Harvey Dent in your Batman thing, you're thinking the entire show, okay, when we get into Two-Face Town, which is the episode we're covering today.
It's called Two-Face Town. We've arrived. But yeah, he does a great job. And also other notable voices I just want to go over, just some of the guest stars. So we have Christina Ricci as Selena Kyle / Catwoman. She does a great job. Minnie Driver as the Penguin / Oswalda Cobblepot. She's great. We just covered Tarzan on our What a Cartoon Movie podcast, and she was one of the standout voice performers on that in that cast.
Yeah, and she still got it 25 years later as the Penguin in this, which I almost felt like that was like a middle finger or whatever to people who will complain about gender swapping characters, that they're like, oh, let's see if we can gender swap the Penguin and see if those same alt-right guys will complain about it with the Penguin of all characters.
It did feel like bait to make that the first episode, but in the end, it was a good episode. So,
well, and also it makes it very different from the Batman Penguin, who is basically Tony Soprano.
Yeah. I don't know if I like that. I know is this series on yet? Is the Penguin series on TV?
It's coming soon.
Okay,
it's coming soon, and I swear that the trailer for the whole season, like it is The Sopranos. Like, it seriously is. They said, we're going to make season 1 of The Sopranos, except it stars the Penguin.
Man, I don't know if I like that. I either want the Burton Penguin, this one, or the one from the animated series who was sort of like a high society weirdo who was also an outcast because of his freakish flippers.
And he's voiced by Paul Williams, so he has like kind of a fancy voice. Yeah.
And also, I wanted to call out Cedric Yarbrough as Rupert Thorne, who we know best as Deputy Jones from Reno 911. So there you have it. That's where he ended up.
He's been doing a lot of voice work these days. I did want to check. I actually double checked that on the internet because I was like, I've messed up. I mess up names so much. He is apparently Cedric. I watched an interview with him where he gets called Cedric right at the start. Yeah.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, I just think of that the cop character he played, but he's been doing so much voice acting, even in DC stuff. So that's how he ended up here, playing a much older character. Any other voice actors you wanted to call out, Henry? Those are the main ones I wanted to call out. But it's a lot of great people, a lot of people that are character actors. And then I noticed at least a few old-timey voice actors, like Jeff Bennett pops up here and there in this show.
Yeah, and then Kari Wahlgren in this too. And, the one other one I wanted to bring up was the voice of Rigby from Regular Show, who does a million things too. William Salyers, or I think that's it. He's also Dr. Octopus in the Spider-Man PS4 games. He's also he's a dependable guy, but it is, like you said, he is another cartoon regular. There are more cartoon people in this than in previous ones. Not that they do a bad job, but they didn't have the rule of no Frank Welkers in this that they had before.
I can pull out a Jeff Bennett voice from a mile away, but it's not that distracting. So I feel like they did a good job here. And that is it for the history of Cape Crusader. When we come back after the break, we'll cover the episode "The Killer Inside Me."
question on everyone's mind these days. What do you think about the Batman?
I'm frightened. This whole city's gone to hell in a handbasket.
Well, he's breaking the law, ain't he? So they ought to catch that freak and lock him up.
I won't say it's gonna be easy, but catching criminals is what we do. So this one dresses up like Dracula, so what? We're gonna take him down. What do we know about this Batman?
He's been beating the tar out of muggers and dope peddlers out there the last few weeks.
He's mostly been seen at night driving that hot rod of his 100 miles an hour.
And now he's even attacking our brave police.
Nice car.
This man is not a hero, he's a criminal. And his time in Gotham is up.
Mischief afoot, sir?
3 explosions in 2 weeks. Peculiar. There's something more going on here.
He knows too much. He's an itch that needs to get scratched.
The kings don't run this court anymore. The jester does.
Bang!
Look out!
We could be looking at
An all-out gang war on the streets of Gotham.
This is a losing battle. 100 other monsters will show up to replace anyone you take down.
Probably. But now they'll all know I'm coming for them.
Hey everybody, welcome to the break for the What a Cartoon episode all about Batman Cape Crusader. I'm one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. I'm flipping a coin. Heads, you join the Patreon. Tails, you don't. Oh, look at that, it's heads. I guess you have no choice. Who is here with me today?
It's Henry Gilbert, a.k.a. Pennyworth Yeller-Etter.
And we're hoping you're enjoying this episode. And if you want to enjoy more of our podcast, well, head on over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. What you get for signing up for $5 a month is all of these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free. And on top of that, you get nearly 200 bonus full-length miniseries episodes covering things like Futurama, King of the Hill, The Critic, Mission Hill, and more importantly, Batman, the animated series. Like we said in the podcast, if you like us talking about Batman, there are I think 20 episodes of Blab About Batman, the animated series, behind that $5 paywall at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And there is a $10 level as well. When you sign up for that, you get all the $5 stuff, but you also get one mega-long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And there are 3 Batman movies at that level. What's going on there, Henry?
Yes, Bob is talking about the What a Cartoon Movie podcast, our bonus podcast that is more like 3 extra podcasts you get at the end of the month for $10 and up subscribers. In addition to all those $5 things, we are about to cover B-movie this month, the terrible Jerry Seinfeld film, because we also like to make fun of a bad film every now and then, in addition to celebrating great films. But I'll tell you what, we're very celebratory when we cover Batman movies. Our first one we ever did was Batman Mask of the Phantasm. After that, we covered Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker. And most recently, we did Batman Superman, World's Finest. So we have covered 3 of the DC Animated Universe Batman films that we truly love, just in the same spirit that we enjoy the Cape Crusader series. And you want to hear our super in-depth chat about all of those, and almost 6 years total, over 200 hours of What a Cartoon Movie podcast. We've covered tons of Disney films, tons of Warner films, tons of Ghibli films, even junk like Cool World, other superhero stuff like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and our longest podcast ever, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, for 6.5 hours of pure animation history. You can hear all of that, the giant back catalog that is ad-free, and all the $5 things as well when you sign up at the premium level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it's so easy to do. Just go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, sign up, and when you do, you can use any podcast app or device you might have to listen to our bonus podcast alongside any of your regular podcasts as part of your podcasting lifestyle. And that is it for this little ad. Now get ready to hear us talk about Episode 9 of Batman Cape Crusader, The Killer Inside Me. So we're back to talk about The Killer Inside Me, and as a fan of this man, I have to let you know that this is a reference to the Jim Thompson novel, The Killer Inside Me, although the next episode, Savage Night, is a reference to a superior Jim Thompson novel, so read Savage Night. The Killer Inside Me, I think, is merely okay, and behind me are 23 Jim Thompson novels, so I speak from authority.
Wow, man, this is see, I'm on the other side of this, just like I thought. Like, here's from the title is a reference I did not get from Deep Noir. So that shows you Brubaker knows his stuff, then, huh?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and they made The Killer Inside Me into a bad, not great movie in 2010. And for years, I heard like, oh, the original novel is so fucked up, and they have to make it into a fucked up movie. No one will film this movie. Every Jim Thompson movie is about you are in the mind of a regular man who becomes a killer, and it's like you're going to learn how a killer functions and all the dirty things they do. And The Killer Inside Me is not very different than really any of his other books. In fact, I think many of them other ones are better. Contact me if you want a Jim Thompson recommendation. I can tell you what to read. But Savage Night, the final episode of this series, is one of the best Jim Thompson books by far. I want to go over who wrote and directed the episode. So it's written by Jace Ricci. No relation to Christina, as far as I know.
Okay.
So he's credited with the story and the teleplay for episode 1 of this series about the Penguin, and he's also a co-executive producer on this show. And he got his start by writing 26 episodes of the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. That's the third TV series, which is all CGI, and I believe the 2007 CGI movie was sort of like the pilot for that, or the proving ground that could work.
Right. That was the first all Nick one. That's now like 3 turtles ago, I think. I just played at a barcade. I just played a arcade game, a new arcade game that's based on that version of the Turtles. So I can see them in my mind right now.
And then this writer went on to write for Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure before moving into the world of DC Animation, where he wrote for DC Superhero Girls, and wrote the animated movie where they team up with Teen Titans Go. So that exists. And
wow.
Yeah, have you noticed how many direct-to-streaming, direct-to-video DC animated movies there are? There are a ton.
I really only took it in when they started appearing on the Max app, and I could scroll through them. Like, that's how I learned that the series Ruby crossed over with the Justice League in a 2-film special.
Wow. Yeah, there are a lot of Batman films as well. So right before this, Ricci worked on 2 Batman projects. He was one of the writers on the Batman direct-to-video movie, Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham, and he's also credited with the screenplay for the short Merry Little Batman. So he is, I don't know if there's a lot of dialogue in that, but he did the screenplay for that short.
No, that had good writing in it, though. All of those tonally, except maybe The Doom That Came to Batman, like those are kid shows with more comedic. Like it is not the style of this show. Like this is a big leap for him as a writer. I mean, he's certainly put in his time at Warner and has earned a spot like this, but does not fit with his previous credits you were telling me about there.
Yeah, this is a real step up for him in terms of like more adult programming.
Yeah.
And it's directed by Christopher Berkeley. So Christopher got his start in the late 90s as a storyboard artist and director on Extreme Ghostbusters. And then he would direct on some kids' WB shows like Men in Black, Godzilla, and Jackie Chan Adventures. And then after that, he found his way into the world of DC Animation, directing shows like the Pre-Go Teen Titans, The Batman, and Young Justice. And he's also the director of the direct-to-video Batman movie I just mentioned, The Doom That Came to Gotham. So a lot of experience in the world of DC. And outside of his directing credits, Berkeley has a ton of storyboarding credits on a lot of Scooby-Doo stuff and a lot of miscellaneous DC stuff, including a lot of Batman. So I feel like all the talent they're getting for this show are pulled from within DC Animation, from music to writing to directing. It's all coming from people who have made their way up in this silo.
It does seem like at Warner up until recently, maybe sadly this is like things are worse now, but it did seem like for at least a decade at Warner that if you didn't like sell a show or get a gig on something at Cartoon Network or a slightly different show, you could always count on being able to staff up on a Batman or a Scooby. There's like always a Batman or a Scooby, probably like 2 or 3 per year that they're making new each year.
Yeah, and again, we talked about how there's so many Batman movies you don't know about. There's so many DC movies you don't know about. There's so many Scooby-Doo movies you don't even know about. Looking at these credits, I had no idea. These feel like an annual thing for DC, or Warner Brothers, rather.
Oh, at the very least. And also same with like there's like 8 Tom and Jerry films, direct-to-video films we don't think about either. And I'm not even talking about the live action one they did with the Tom and Jerry like CGI characters. I mean like the Tom and Jerry Meet the Wizard of Oz or Willy Wonka.
Yeah, a lot of weird crossovers there. So previously on the Cape Crusader, or Batman Cape Crusader, throughout the season, through the serialized storytelling, we see that Harvey Dent, the district attorney, has been running a highly compromised campaign for mayor. We see how, his relationship with Barbara Gordon reflects their own views on justice. And then we see that his campaign is partially being funded by the crime lord Rupert Thorne. And, Rupert Thorne has the I scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of mentality. You mean the mob only did me a favor to get something in return? Yes, Harvey Dent. That's what happened.
Rupert Thorne, for shame.
I will go now. Rupert Thorne wants Dent to drop the charges on one of his associates. So when Dent plays hardball and refuses, that's when he gets the old acid in the face. And that's how he becomes Two-Face. He's attacked by one of Thorne's goons. And we pick up post-acid attack right here. And I believe in the animated series, it's done in a less grisly and personal version of the acid scarring. It's like an explosion at a factory or some sort of thing like that.
Oh, it is an explosion at the factory. Yeah, it's like that's how they also explain that his hand is effed up too. In the animated series version, like half of his body falls over the side of a grate.
That's right. One. Yeah, it's less something that could happen in real life. Which, of course, these things happen. This is like a classic retaliation move, even today. The old acid in the face. So yeah, but it's drawing back to these classic crime stories. And we open the episode. We're at this Harvey Dent rally. He's announcing the votes have been counted and he's proud to be the new mayor of Gotham City. But currently, he's normal face. So we know something is up. He's just been scarred. You just watched the last episode. You know that this must be some sort of a dream. And we know something is up because in the audience, we see Rupert Thorne, Tony Zito, the goon who disfigured him. They're sitting in the audience. Bruce Wayne is there. Montoya is there. Barbara Gordon is there. And you know something's weird because we cut to a conspicuous profile shot of Harvey. When you can only see one side of his face, you know the other side's going to be coming out pretty soon, and it's going to be bad news, right?
Oh yeah, you don't see half of a face in profile of Harvey Dent for good reasons ever. Like I love this sequence is like very Citizen Kane. The big poster of himself behind him. He's been running for mayor the whole season with this compromise campaign. But I really do like how they played Dent up to this point in the show. Because you're always looking for like, okay, how bad is Dent before he becomes Two-Face? And in this case, throughout the series, you see that like he will make a compromise to get what he wants. But sometimes he'll be like, well, hey, I'm not a bad guy. I'm just an opportunistic guy. Like and then what scars his face is when he decides to actually not be a bad guy for once and not completely sell out.
He's punished for doing a good deed. And I noticed in this show, they don't play up his superstitious elements that were a part of Harvey Dent in the animated series, where he's always flipping the coin. It's part of his personality. Here, it happens once, just because I think they have to have it happen, but he's not doing the Anton Chigurh thing all the time as Two-Face. It's just he does it once, it's out of the way, and he's back to being the Jekyll and Hyde figure. Although he's way more Hyde. Jekyll barely gets to come out in when he becomes full Two-Face.
It is funny that he has the one coin bit in the first episode with him and Barbara Gordon, and then they have it in this episode where they pretty much just chuck it away like, you're right, that's dumb. Like it's a fun way to play with expectations without just being in your face of, oh, I bet you thought we'd do this. Well, actually, like they're not shoving it in your face that they're zigging instead of zagging.
Yeah, they're just being very subtle. So I have my first clip here, and it's titled, "What's Wrong with Your Face?"
Yes, a new day is rising.
What's wrong with his face?
And it is a new dawn for Gotham, and
Look at it.
Because together we can build.
He looks like some kind of monster.
We can build a better
Monster.
Better.
God, what happened?
Monster. I think I'm gonna be next. Although he was recently my opponent, I have always considered Harvey Dent one of Gotham's finest public servants. A truly great man and a dear friend. I wish him the speediest of recoveries.
Any comment on District Attorney Dent's sudden resignation?
Only that I have every confidence in our new acting district attorney, Peter Mitchell.
So, Mitchell's the new DA. Good for Pete. He was always a smart, dedicated, hard-working, backstabbing little snake.
He'll pay for this. They're all gonna pay.
So we see his disheveled apartment. It could be more trash, but he's drinking. The giant, massive 1940s TV is pulled up next to the couch, and that's when he's watching the news report. But we see just some signs of mental disturbance where there's a bunch of his campaign stuff packed into a box, and we see the Vote Dent poster that's been framed with a glass frame, and it's shattered in a very conspicuous way.
I was watching oh, that beer can better have a pull tab, not the more modern way of opening the can. And yeah, it looked more like a 1940s pull tab beer. I like I wish that there could be more detail on his messed up place, but I like the detail of how he's losing it, how he dropped out of the race. He didn't even lose the election. He just got horribly maimed and then just gave up because he's losing his mind. But that I want to point out here, this is such a clever design change they made with Dent, which is typically in most versions of Harvey Dent, and this goes for Tommy Lee Jones, this goes for Batman the Animated Series, this goes for most comic book versions, and and also like the Christopher Nolan version too. Left side is the scarred face, which, as we know from The Simpsons, means sinister or left-handed. But it's always the left side. This side is the right side, and that is a key point to how they portray which side is like talking in scenes. Like the right side is the ugly one, but it's the side that is good. Like it's still the left side that's bad, even though that voices the negative thoughts, even though that's his good looking side of his face. It's such a clever thing for designing, straight from design, of making the right side the scarred face when normally it is the left side on Harvey Dent.
And unlike the Batman the Animated Series version, it's just the face has been scarred. The hand, it's not the entire side of the body. Presumably half of his penis is blue.
That's really why he's so angry in that show.
No, my penis was on the entire side of the grate. It's all blue.
I hang to the left.
But yeah, I didn't even notice that. It's such a, again, more subtle design than the animated series, which I like how far that goes, where his skin is blue, his eye is gigantic, his hair is a different color. Here, it's just like, I guess, semi-realistic scarring, but we'll talk more about it. The reveal has not happened quite yet, but at this point, he's just bandaged up. So yeah, not having a good time at home, recuperating. Not working his disfiguration into, a part of the campaign. Like, my face is burned. Well, I'm burned up about taxes, folks.
I think he'd get the sympathy vote there. Yeah. But then again, though, maybe he's thinking, if I keep running, then Rupert Thorne's just going to reveal that he gave me all this money. So I just give up.
I would say he's going to burn more of me with acid. I thought the face was bad, but who knows what's next. So yeah, we have that scene. We get the intro, which I will say is perfectly fine. It evokes the mood of this series. But these things are designed to be skipped, so they don't put too much work into them. So they're not going to create the show-stopping, iconic intro from the original series. They're just going to say, here's a tone setter. You're probably going to get up to use the bathroom or grab a beer real quick. But most of the time, you're going to hit skip intro, and that's what it's designed to do.
And some of it is just clip packages, too. So they just like put, or, clips from other episodes, and they put the filter over it. So it's not all original, too. Like the shot of Batman threatening that reporter, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that shot.
Yeah, as I watch more, I realize like, oh, these are setups they're reusing here and putting the filter over it. So yeah, it does what it needs to do. So that's over. We open in Gotham, of course. We pan down from the night sky to the police station building. We go inside, and Gordon is busting everyone's balls over the fact that it's been 2 weeks since the Dent attack, and Bullock and Flass have nothing. Honestly, Gordon, you should be onto these guys by now. They suck. The only time they're motivated is to kill people or to line their pockets.
I really love how the episode about them setting up that an arsonist and then murdering them, that man, that's how they get to be in charge. Like, it gets them a promotion doing that.
Yeah.
Like the show does. It doesn't want to say all cops are bastards. That's not what. Obviously, you're supposed to think that there are good cops like Montoya and Gordon. But I do like that they have bad cops in here who are just bad guys, and that Barbara Gordon is kind of there to be the character who's the liberal mouthpiece of, like, Dad, you actually just you over criminalize people, or this guy wasn't a bad guy and all that. Like, it has a good view on the criminal justice system.
We're talking more about the police, but Bullock and Flass give them the lowdown. They say they worked every one of their contacts and came up with nothing. I think when they say that, they mean they beat up people in a room, but in this case, I'm sure they did nothing. And Dent himself can't remember the attack, supposedly. Montoya is skeptical that Dent could possibly forget this kind of event in his own life, and she suspects that he got into something he wants to keep a secret. This is when Bullock is conspicuously offended that Montoya suggested that Dent was on the take, because Bullock is clearly on the take, so he is offended by any kind of accusations anywhere close to him.
It's also funny. They pose they pose Bullock with a chocolate bar in his hand, which I feel like they did a bunch in the original animated series too. Like, he's just always eating some junk food while talking.
Yeah, I guess they can't have people smoke even in this. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I can't really think of any real smokers in this. Maybe Clayface did in one of his scenes. I don't think so, though. Yeah, limited on the smoking.
Yeah. So Bullock suggests that Dent had plenty of enemies. Occam's razor, he's put a bunch of people in the joint. He's got a lot of people after him. And he says to Montoya, he was no angel, but he wasn't dirty. And Montoya spits back at him like you'd even notice. So she knows something's going on with Bullock and Flass, but Gordon is too focused on the task at hand.
Yeah, because he's probably had to deal with bad cops his whole life. Like, it's, I should say, Flass in the original appearance, he's not black or a sharp dresser. I think this definitely is a different take on the guy. Though I like him as, like, he's the brains and Bullock is the muscle, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. And in my next clip here, Gordon gets back to business.
That's enough. I'm no fan of Dent either, but we need answers. The mayor's been raking me over the coals.
You'd think he'd want to give whoever did this the key to the freaking city.
Turns out his opponent being taken out so close to the election is just a little too convenient for some people, especially the press. Bottom line, the Dent case is top priority, so get on it. Not interested. Beat it.
Bruce?
Get dressed, pal. I'm taking you out. You've been cooped up too long. Yeah, way too long, I'd say. Come on. I got us a table at Utterson's.
No, No, I don't think that's...
It's exactly what you need. You can't just hole up in here with the curtains drawn like you've given up on life. Come on, you're Harvey Dent. You never quit on anything. It's just not in your nature.
And those words will come back to haunt him at the end of the episode.
Ooh, man. That is classic Brubaker writing style of lines like that set it up, but they don't get too in your face. I think it reads better than it is to hear, but you can still catch it. I like the relationship of Bruce and Harvey in this, that they set up earlier in the series that Harvey Dent is a rich kid. So him and Harvey and Bruce have the background of, like, oh yeah, we were rich kids. We see each other at all the same parties, like, and the, dare I say, privilege that both of them live with come out so often in the series. It's, I love Harley Quinn's episode is good, but I actually like the setup of her interviewing Bruce Wayne and her saying, like, yeah, no, I can tell exactly what your problem is.
And Bruce is not here because he cares. Maybe some part of him cares a little bit, but he's here as an investigation because it's the classic Batman thing that is very trite, but I can say it here, where it's Bruce Wayne is the disguise and Batman is the real person. And he's in his Bruce Wayne disguise to get more clues about this attack and how it ties to Thorne. And he does push his friend too far. His friend is not ready for this. His friend should not be drinking and puking alone, but I don't know if he's ready for a high society night on the town at a very nice restaurant.
It's also very funny to hear Bruce Wayne tell somebody like, you know, this horrible thing happened to you. It's been 2 whole weeks. Time to stop brooding alone all of the time.
Get over it. So they go to this very nice restaurant. We cut inside, and Bruce is trying to cheer Harvey up with this story of a double date gone wrong. We can only assume what's happening there. We only hear the end of the story. But Harvey's mood does not improve at all. He's really self-conscious, understandably. He thinks everyone is staring at him. Bruce reminds him, like, everyone here is your friends and they want you to feel better. Your life is not over. And this is when a well-wisher comes over to shake his hand and let him know
to
we
wish
wish
him
you
well.
Yeah, a well-wisher
Yeah.
who's wishing well. And as he walks away, Harvey can't see anything but sinister intentions. He snaps a bit. We can see the Two-Face persona emerging here. But then he catches himself and he apologizes. Like, oh, why did I say that? I'm sorry. He was fine. He was fine. And Bruce is like, yeah, I know you've been through hell, Harvey. It's okay. You're allowed to be a little touchy. And I brought you out here because I thought you'd, if you were with a friend, you would tell me more about the attack. So he's clearly just trying to pull information out of him. It's all leading to this. Like, oh, we're here. We're friends. So what happened? Dish.
Yes, yeah, he is entirely. This is just the same as Batman holding somebody off of a roof ledge to ask him information. Like that's what's great in the script is that you're just like Pennyworth later. You're questioning Bruce's stuff here. Like, where is Bruce on this? Did he bring him to this public place to make him more nervous, to press him harder, to put him in a rough state? Was this all part of the plan? And I like too in the layout of this that you're hearing what Dent is thinking he's hearing, but you can see all the people at the restaurant. They're not looking at him. They have their own conversations. He isn't just being glared at by everybody. It is mostly in his head, and you can see that in the animation.
And Bruce is just gently pressuring Dent into remembering details about the attack. It's his ulterior motive. And as this is happening, another old friend strolls by the table. And this is when he gets a little two-facey.
Well, look who's here. Harvey Dent. Welcome back, old pal. This place hasn't been the same without you.
Oh, sure. Thanks. That smug bastard. I should cut that smarmy grin right off his friggin' face.
Harvey.
Sorry.
It's fine. So, the guy who attacked you, you didn't see him? Did he say anything to you, or...
What happened to his face?
Or can you think of anyone who would want to do this to you?
Oh, God, look at him. Look at him.
Maybe some convict holding a grudge? Harvey? Are you listening to me? Harvey?
How are we doing over here? Everything okay?
I think we're ready for the check, actually.
Is everything okay? Is everything okay?
Hey.
You think I don't know what you're really asking? What you really want to know? Here, why don't I show you?
Harvey, stop.
This is what you all want, isn't it? Well, it's your lucky night, folks. You've got front row seats to the freak show.
He crossed the line, but I kind of turned into Two-Face when a waitress asked, how are those first few bites doing? How do they look like they're doing? I didn't even touch my food yet.
I take it as like Dent. He's mad. It makes him seem like a real rich guy to me. He's mad at his friends who get into the club, but the only person he is actually abusive toward is the waitstaff.
Yeah, he knows he's allowed. There will be no repercussions. And you can see it's done so well in the audio mix where he's freaking out slowly. He's slowly losing his mind. And in the background, Bruce is still like, oh, do you remember anything? A face maybe? What was he wearing? Like, he can see his friend is losing his mind. He's like, tell me about the worst day of your life again. Can you just go into great detail? It's sort of like when Elon Musk had that like Twitter chat with Trump, and he just kept asking him like, tell me about the day where you were shot. How was that? How'd that feel?
Do you think that the Secret Service did it on purpose? Were they trying to kill you?
You want to change the subject.
You're right. It is a bit similar. The one also, Elon Musk is he wishes he was Batman and Bruce Wayne, but he's really just like he's not even the most evil version of Bruce Wayne anywhere.
So we see the design. In general, I like the design in theory. It's basically right out of EC Comics. It looks like it could be on the cover of EC Comics. I think it doesn't animate very well. Or at least very convincingly. It just looks a little awkward the way they've chosen to make it work with lip sync. I think they could have spent more time figuring that out. But again, money, budget, time. And I honestly think it should change the way he talks because his entire left side of his mouth, is it left or right? Sorry, I'm not on the image in front of me.
It's the right side
it's
is
the, right
the
side.
scarred one, yeah.
The entire right side of his mouth is just like a big gaping hole. So you think he would be talking like this the entire time, you know?
Yeah, well, and they make it clear not just that his mouth is weird, but also that his teeth are fucked up now too. Like his it's like he lost like 4 teeth and it's just all spaced out strangely. So you're right. He should be talking differently, and also his mouth chart should be different too, which again, money.
Yeah,
I get it.
It looks weird when he talks from his Two-Face side, when that's all you see. And I know it's for the sake of making him understandable, but I wish his voice changed just a little bit with how disfigured he looks. I mean, Richard Mole just made him talk like in a low growl. You know, he didn't like make his mouth shapes any differently or anything like that. But I feel like there's something more that could have been done here.
Yeah, and this also, Bader is doing it as a guy with 2 voices instead of a guy with, he's like, well, I want to see, like, I'm sorry. But it fits this version of Two-Face as a guy who had massive political ambitions and then would put on a voice for doing political speeches. So it's like, oh, you're getting the real feeling and then the fake guy. It is a way to create 2 personas as a politician.
But he's making a big scene. He reveals the bad part of his face and he just tells everyone, take a good long look. It's all what you want to see, isn't it? He's just creating these enemies in his mind. He grabs the waitress, gets in her face, like, do I look okay to you, sweetheart? And that's when Batman has to like rescue this poor woman. He goes in for a punch and Bruce just like stops it in midair. So he's not putting up with any of this. And this is when he just runs away from the horrible mess that he caused. Everybody is concerned. No one is whispering or laughing. It's sort of like that when Ned Flanders has his freak out in Hurricane Nettie. I think Bill Oakley said he wanted it to be a realistic freak out where everyone is just concerned and sad when it happens. No one's laughing or making mean comments. They're just like, oh my God, that poor man.
No, they don't make a point of having like a funny line in this scene. They just want to leave you uncomfortable. And it does feel like so many classic animated series original ones where, a horrible thing happens to a person who then learns they can't live in regular society anymore. And then they freak out and then go on a revenge spree.
Mm-hmm. So this is when we cut back to Wayne Manor. It's the pouring rain. Batman is looking at his dry erase board. Alfred is just working in the background, and Batman is just like bouncing things off of Alfred. Alfred is not the father figure in this version of Batman. He's more of like an employee that someone for Bruce to talk to, but he doesn't really respect that much. And he's saying to Alfred that Dent is hiding something, and Alfred takes this opportunity to let Batman know, maybe you're pushing him to the edge. Maybe he wasn't ready for this. And Batman just won't let him get a word in edgewise. He's saying, well, this is for Harvey's sake. I'm trying to find out who hurt him, and I'm just using the same tactics he would have used. So in a way, I'm not doing anything wrong. So he's in deep denial about these tactics he's using and how he's trying to find a way to make himself the good guy, but he's clearly is driving his friend to the edge and creating a villain here.
In the old show, like this kind of Alfred, I told you so would be played for laughs, and he'd also... Bruce would kind of have to admit, I guess you're right. But instead, he is just flatly cutting him off like, no, you're stupid. No, shut up.
He'll just say, shut up, Pennyworth.
Well, and it's great in the Gentleman Ghost episode how they show that like that Lucius Fox, when he appears in this, who was played by Morgan Freeman in the Nolan movies, Lucius Fox shows up and he knows all about Alfred's background, things Bruce Wayne never bothered to know because he's like, well, yeah, this is my employee at best. He's not a man I've known since I was a child.
I'm glad you brought up the ghost episode because when I was watching that, I thought, well, what is this? Is this like some sort of, this is the 40s. What could they do to make this thing function? No, it's really a ghost. I love in this down-to-earth, subtle noir Batman episode, he fights a ghost and a vampire. But I guess that's drawing back to the 40s horror movies that Tim wanted to tap into as well.
That was a big moment for me that I really enjoyed. That, like, you know what? No, in this world, ghosts are real, and so are vampires.
I almost wanted to do the vampire one, but I think this is the best one to do because it is the payoff of what's been building through the whole series so far.
Yeah, I agree.
So we see Alfred is concerned. Batman won't let him get a word in edgewise. Alfred tells him, just spare a thought for the man, Master Bruce. Whatever he was, I don't think that's who he is anymore. And then we catch up with Harvey Dent doing some night muttering. Let's hear it.
Call me a monster. The real monsters are the ones who did this to me. I don't deserve this. Any of this. No. That's not right. I've done things. Terrible things. But didn't I pay for my sins? While Thorne and his boys are out there living the high life, laughing it up. Not for long. No, not for long.
Help! Help! Shut up, cool. Just give me the damn wallet.
You okay, mister?
Yes, I'm
Good. Now, what do you think we should do about this guy? Do we leave him for the cops so they can give him a slap on the wrist? Or do we make our own justice?
Wait, but you can't mean...
Tell you what, let's flip for it. Heads, we hand him over to the cops. Tails, we don't.
So he sees an opportunity, and this is when his spree begins. Although he's kind of working on the side for good, but he's sort of like the Judge Dredd version of his past role. It's like, what if I could just shoot criminals?
But they play this. I really love how they play this against expectations. Like if this was like other, say the version in The Dark Knight, when he becomes Two-Face, he just starts murdering people all the time. But with a very strict rule of, I will flip this coin and I'll either do this or I'll do that. But he is murdering tons of people, and he's already crossed the line. This Two-Face is like, hey, you want to flip a coin for it? No, I would never. Okay, well, but I do want to shoot him. And he shoots him in the leg.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting how his morals have been flexible but not broken.
It's like his own twisted sense of justice is what's the operating factor in all of these murders that are happening. It's not just random people. It's like I'm seeking out a justice via my new violent persona.
And this is where I appreciated the layout the most of the episode, and where it hit me that, like, oh, the evil side, his scarred side being on the right side is a very intentional choice, because so when he's doing his muttering, like, it's not fair, Rupert Thorne's out free and I didn't do anything wrong. You see the unscarred side. Then when he says, no, that's not true, I did things, horrible things, that is the scarred side you're seeing, who is telling the truth about, like, wait, no, I'm not a pure victim here. And then when he says, but haven't I paid enough? That's when he turns his head and you see the non-scarred side. So it shows that the side that realizes I did bad things and I did kind of cause this to myself, that is the scarred side, but the good moral side and the not good moral side is the unscarred side. It's just so that was where it really hit me in the layout of what side was saying what lines, of how clever it was.
Yeah, very, very subtle. So he gets revenge on this mugger by shooting him in the leg. We fade to the same alley a bit later. This mugger's being loaded onto a gurney. Montoya knows this guy's rap sheet. Apparently his name is Benny, and he doesn't believe that he was out in an alley totally not mugging someone for the fourth time, and that someone shot him in the knee for no reason. And he's carted away sounding like a crazy person, blaming some guy who had half his face melted off. And as soon as the door is shut on the ambulance, Gordon is like, do you think he's talking about Harvey Dent? So they're worried that Harvey Dent is this guy who is now starting a crime spree, or at least just like shooting random muggers.
And it asks the question, starting here with how he just shot a random mugger but helped a guy who was a victim of crime, of like, how different is he from Batman? What is his, where is the line? It's always great to cast your villain against Batman and show similarities and differences.
And this is when I believe Montoya offers to keep an eye on Dent, and Gordon's like, we'll just keep this under wraps because word gets out about him and we're not ready. This could be bad for all of us. So she goes off to Harvey's. Nobody's in. It's one of those classic things in the old movies where you knock on the door and the door just swings open because they left the door ajar and unlocked. And nobody's there. She sees the shattered frame Dent poster with the spider webs cracks coming out from his face. And a look of concern crosses over her face. We can see she has a feeling that he has changed and this is not good for anyone. And after this, we follow Denton to a bar where he meets up with an old friend.
Emil Potter.
I know you.
I'm looking for a guy who works for Boss Thorne, Tony Zito.
I don't know any Zito or Thorne, so hold the phone. I know you. You're that DA jerk. Tried to send me up the river.
That's right. But I couldn't get those charges to stick, could I? And why was that? Oh, yeah. Because Rupert Thorne made my key witness skip town. So let's cut the crap. Where's Tony Zito?
I don't know. I swear! Wait, no! I know! I mean, I know what broad Zito runs with. Maggie Kane.
See, Emil, that was easy.
Freak.
I like how they play things pretty subtle again. They could have easily shown this stuff. They could have shown Two-Face shooting the mugger and said he shoots at the camera and we fade out. The beating of this guy happens all off screen. We only see the exterior of the bar, although we see some gruesome puppety people running out with their puppet strings. It's very cheap looking. Check that scene out again. It's something that stood out to me upon watching it. Like, this looks so cheap.
Yeah, no, it's a little rough there. But I do like the difference with him and Batman. Like, he threatens a guy until he gets the truth, but then when he gets called a freak, he just turns back and horribly beats a guy, like breaks multiple limbs and leaves him in traction. But it makes sense as a mystery too, basically he's like a detective because he knows, I know who to go to next. The guy who I couldn't prosecute because he has connections to Thorne, he'll tell me where to find this guy.
Yeah, and I do love how when you're Two-Face, you have to be very good at knowing which side of your face is visible at any time to a person. So you might be like sidling into a room. People are like, what is he doing? What's that normal faced man doing? And then you turn slightly and they're like, oh my God, it's Two-Face.
Harvey Dent's new superpower is knowing sight lines very well.
I guess when you become Two-Face, it's just a natural ability you develop. So we go to Thorne and Son watching a baseball game together. It's fun that we find out later that they've been gambling on it. That's part of their father-son bonding. One of his goons slips in, apologizes for the interruption, and lets him know that Jerry is worried that Dent is behind some of these recent attacks, and Thorne could be at risk. But Thorne is like way too confident. He assures him Dent couldn't touch him when he had every cop in the city backing him up. So Thorne is feeling very he's very much the cock of the walk in Gotham these days.
Too full of himself. Cedric Yarborough does such a good job with Thorne's voice. I like it. I was just reminded of another line another great thing he has done, which he was in Black Dynamite, the movie, and maybe he's in the TV, the cartoon too. But in the movie, I've seen this now shared a bunch in my feed because it is just so funny when Black Dynamite goes in the room like, I'm going to stop people from selling drugs in this community, and then Cedric's character replies with, but Black Dynamite, I sell drugs in this community.
I've always wanted to see that. The movie, not the show, but I heard they're both good.
It's pretty good. I would say they kind of they're stuck for an ending in original the Black Dynamite film, but it's a very fun film.
So yeah, we learn that Thorne is very confident. He doesn't think Dent is out to get him. This is when he points out, I've got all these armed men working for me around the clock, and then he goes back to the baseball game. If you don't mind, the boy and I have money on this game. So he goes back to his little den. We go inside the Batmobile. This is when Alfred is calling in with this report that Emil Potter was assaulted by a man matching Dent's description. Alfred tells him that if Dent is targeting associates of Thorne, it's reasonable to assume, and that's when Batman interrupts him because Batman is a dick in this series.
I know. He's trying to tell him, like, you did this, I told you not to, and just he starts screaming at him, like, how even dare you? Like, I love how he just screams, like, the situation isn't escalating, and you're wasting my time, Pennyworth, like... Because I thought in the Gentleman Ghost episode he learned his lesson and he was going to start calling him Alfred, but now he's still pissed at him. He's like, no, you're Pennyworth now again, and I'm distancing you more.
Make sure my soup's warm when I get home, asshole. Let's hear Batman be a bit of a dick.
Just an hour or so after your night out with him. You realize that?
I needed answers.
Yes, so you said.
The situation's escalating and you're wasting my time, Pennyworth.
Yeah.
I'm looking for Tony Zito.
Well, he ain't here, so scram.
I'm so sorry. I just really need to speak to Tony.
Well, you're out of luck. Tony must have done something real rotten this time. The one's got him hiding in some safe house somewhere.
Damn it. Would you know where I might find this safe house?
Suppose I did. Why would I tell you?
Oh, I'm sure I could come up with a couple of reasons.
Harvey Dent. What did he want?
So yeah, we really see the closed-off Batman that Bruce Timm wanted. He calls Alfred Pennyworth, as we said before. He hangs up on him, which I don't think the other Batman would ever do. And I love this, I forget her name, the name of this woman, but she's the perfect street smart gal from a film noir movie. She's got all the lingo down. She does get shaken up, but she's still like standing her ground against Batman and Two-Face to a point.
Yeah, it's Maggie.
Maggie Kane.
I think.
Yeah.
She's a real tough dame, she's played by Haru herself, Kari Walgren. No, she's really good. I like how same with how he violently kicks in the door and knocks her to the ground, and she doesn't lose her a step. Like, she's like, so what? I ain't heard of him. Like, and I also really like this story is that Batman's always one step behind Dent. Like, Dent horribly beats up this guy and interviews him. Then Batman goes to his hospital room and he's going to now interrogate this guy. Poor guy gets interrogated twice in one night.
Yes. Batman's a little gentler. So yeah, he visits the room of Emil Potter. We cut to Dent loading a revolver. He's going into the Ivory Hotel. Then we cut in to see three men are playing cards in a very rundown room. One of them is Tony Zito, the droopy-eyed guy who threw acid in his face. He's gloating over his winning. These guys are clearly sick and tired of hanging out with him, but they're protecting him in this hotel room. And he goes, being holed up with you two schnooks ain't half bad. He's scooping in all the winnings. And his goons are telling him, well, this Dent business is going to blow over soon, so don't get used to it. You'll be out of the hot seat pretty soon. He's shuffling the next round of cards. He smells something burning. One of the goons goes to investigate a nearby door with his gun drawn. He opens the door to see there's like a trash fire burning in front of him. And before he can figure out what's happening, he's shot from behind the smoke. So clearly the murderer is here. The other man is shot immediately afterwards. Zito is hiding under the table as the shadowy figure enters, slowly approaches him under the table. There's a beat of tension, but then suddenly Dent drops into a crouch and puts a gun in the man's face and goes, hello, Tony. So great entrance for Harvey Dent. Great spooky entrance.
Yeah, there's a lot of little details in this I love, but three big ones I want to mention were, one, it being called the Ivory Hotel, like that's like, oh, they're in their ivory tower, like this is where he's protected. And then note, the twos are always so consistent in appearing in Two-Face stories. He opens up his gun to check the number of bullets in the revolver, 2 bullets.
Oh, okay.
He then And what's the winning hand of the guy he's going to go kill? It's an ace with all twos, 4 twos and an ace.
I'm seeing double here, 4 twos. Oh my God, we did the same joke. I want the editor to edit that so we are both overlapping each other. Although I will not fault him if he doesn't. But we're insane. We're both insane. I just want to point that out. Now where was I? Oh yes, we go to Maggie Kane's apartment, where she pockets the Gotham airline ticket, and she's pocketing a pistol. She's getting ready to head out. She's getting ready to blow town, as they say.
It's such a great reveal. When you see her there, you're like, wait, a plane ticket? Like, I thought, based on how she was left at the end of the last scene, she was being threatened. Like, it seemed like Two-Face was going to horribly beat her, just like he did the Emil character earlier.
Yeah, it turns out you can. Two-Face will not brutalize you if you give him what he wants, and then you don't make fun of him afterwards.
Smart. Maggie's got much more smarts than Emil.
Mm-hmm. It's toxic masculinity is what's getting people beaten up by Two-Face. So she's getting ready to head out. Batman scares her by saying going somewhere, and then she reaches in her pocket to get the gun. He says don't. So he's an intimidating force. And this is when we see Batman interrogating Maggie.
I'm not your first visitor tonight.
The last one was a real looker. A mug like he lost a fight with a motorboat.
He was after your boyfriend, Tony Zito, wasn't he?
Ex-boyfriend now. Old Gruesome gave me enough scratch to leave this city for good. After I told him where he could find Tony.
And where is that?
I don't want to kill you, Tony. Really, I don't. But I found that sometimes what we want, or don't want, isn't always compatible with the greater good.
Dent, please. I'm sorry.
You know what? I believe you. But just as much as I'd like to give you another chance, handing out second chances to people like you just doesn't work. Because you and all the others, you aren't actually people. You're cancer. And everyone knows you don't treat cancer with second chances. You gotta cut it out right at the source.
Please, Dent. You don't have to do this. I'll pay you. Please.
Tony, your money's no good here. You can't imagine the amount of pain and suffering you put me through. But you will.
It's great we're getting these back-to-back interrogation scenes where I think you said earlier, we're seeing how they're each handling things differently. Batman is asking a woman questions. Two-Face is setting him man up to be burned alive. Different strategies involved here.
And I just love his speech that he's like, no, I'm not listening. But it is like a political speech. Like he's like, hey, I wouldn't do this, but I really can't. I really love how he says, and for the record, the other guy may not want to kill you, but I sure as hell do. And when he lights the match again, I believe it is the match obscures the scarred side. So when he's like, I sure as hell do, it's the unscarred side. That's the evil side.
Yeah, Tony gives the weepy confession. That's right before he says, I don't want to kill you, but the other guy does. That's when he's lighting the match, and we cut to Batman walking through the alley next to the hotel. His attention is drawn to the sound of a man being burned alive and the flames shooting up from the windows. And he turns his head to see Harvey Dent escaping in his GameCube-era car. And inside, we see him actually feeling some guilt over killing 3 men. So Batman, he's doing a bad job in this episode. He's failing at every turn. Dent is one step ahead. And I think, like in the original cartoon, they could show a man being tied up about to be burned alive, but Batman would jump in the nick of time and save the day. This guy, he's messing up. He's not handling this the right way, and he started this problem in the first place.
And the choice he makes to, instead of going in to try and save this guy, like Batman has a choice. He sees Dent is driving away, and he could go in and save this guy who's screaming in this fiery building, or he can jump on top of Dent's car and try to catch him. And he does not choose to help the guy who probably is too far gone. But this is a different Batman who is prioritizing capturing Dent over potentially saving somebody.
Yeah, he tries to catch up with Dent by jumping on his car. Dent's car bucks him off into a truck. Batman passes out. So Batman's out of the equation for a little bit. We don't know what's going to happen to him.
This car chase is when you really can tell the difference in money.
Yeah.
Like Batman being trapped on top of a car in one of the anime production companies of the 90s ones. The car would be moving. Every lamppost would be moving. They would all be drawn elements in action, and he would be taking damage from things hitting him. Like Spectrum would have done this amazingly. But here it's a CGI car, and Batman can only be hit so much and look so hurt.
I don't like when they're in cars in this series because the cars look bad. The Batmobile looks kind of bad. I'm not a big fan of how they're doing the CGI cars in this. So we go back to Thorne and his son. They're still watching the game. The phone rings, and Thorne answers. It's Bullock with a friendly heads up. He says, Dent completely cracked his nut, and now he's coming for you. So Bullock, I believe we've seen him in touch with. Have we seen him in touch with Thorne before in the series?
Definitely secondaries, but that directly with the crime boss.
Yeah.
No, I mean this is like pure evil. Though this does fit with what I think is in the next episode where Barbara is pointing out to Bullock and Flass. No, it's Dent who says, "Oh yeah, you do all the dirty work, Bullock, so probably Flass can set you up later." And that's what Bullock's doing here. Flass isn't the one on a phone line that might get tapped. It's Bullock who's incriminating himself.
So yeah, he's got a Thorne's private number, I guess, to his den. So Thorne is not taking this seriously and asks, why is everybody so worried? And Bullock lets him know, Dent just off Tony Zito and other goons, then burned the place down. And this is when Thorne starts to look a little worried. So Bullock says, you better call in reinforcements because Dent is coming for you. And this is when Thorne grimly hangs up the phone. We cut to Batman. He is still not giving up. He's pulling his costume over freshly bandaged ribs. We find out that he might have a concussion. Alfred is like, don't go out. You're too injured. And Batman says, I refuse to let Harvey continue this rampage. If I set him on this path, I have to stop him. So at least he's taking responsibility for what he did.
And they set up the injury and concussion just to make it slightly believable that Harvey Dent would have a chance in a fight against Batman.
Yeah. I guess anybody with a statue arm is not going to win against Batman unless Batman is concussed. Then maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So Batman zooms off, leaving Alfred behind. We go back to Thorne's mansion, and his private goons are setting up a security detail. But Thorne is still optimistic.
I wouldn't count on seeing any action, champ. Dent would never be crazy enough to show up here.
And if that clown did try something, you and me could take him on our own.
Oh, sure we could.
We're set for now, and Ernie's crew will be here any minute. That's Ernie now.
He isn't stopping. Never mind me. Get my son out of here. All right, you son of a... What the... He's in the house! Spread out!
And I at first thought this was going to be Harvey Dent in the car, but it's really two of his men who he's killed, and he jammed a crowbar underneath the accelerator. This is all a diversion for him to get into the house and get the tactical advantage of being up in the balcony. So very smart for Dent to do this.
All of these designs for the thugs do look like taken out of the same style. Like James Tucker is doing the type of thug design they did for the guys in the original animated series, like huge boxy bodies. They all have like a hat on and a trench coat. I think a lot of them have the Tommy guns that you'd always see in these old shows.
Yeah, they're just like big rectangles floating around with their boxy clothes. So Two-Face is in the building. They spread out. One of his goons gets shot in the back. Thorne draws their attention to the balcony. That's where he is. All the men start firing at the stranger in the shadows, but with the second story advantage, Dent can easily sneak around, shooting more of Thorne's men. A lot of these men just die on screen. They just get shot to death. And then they start to climb the stairs. It's when he does the classic Warner Brothers trick of throwing a piano at them. He rolls the piano down the stairs, and two men get crushed. And Thorne asks, is that you up there, Dent? And he goes, it ain't Santa Claus. So they're having fun. They're having fun. And
finally, he gets to say funny one-liners that Batman doesn't say in this very serious Batman show.
He's crazy enough to say one-liners. And this is when Thorne finds out what Dent is here for.
What do you want, Harvey?
What I've always wanted. Justice. That's all I've got left, thanks to you.
No more courts or campaign promises or red tape. Because now I'm the judge, jury, and executioner.
Justice. Is that what you call this? Storming into my home, murdering a half-dozen of my men, almost killing my son? That doesn't sound like justice to me, Dent. Sounds more like...
Revenge? Yeah. That too.
No!
Matthew, don't!
If you want to kill my old man, you're gonna have to go through me.
You are one brave kid. But I never could resist a 2-for-1 special.
So luckily, he has a skylight in his house, which means Batman has arrived. It was a nice touch to give him a younger son, who is clearly on the wrong path already, but it's some weakness for Thorne. It's some reason to get him out of the room or to give him other priorities.
And to give a too far line for Two-Face. Like if you were on Harvey Dent's side, you're like, well, yeah, kill this guy. He's the head of all crime in Gotham. Fuck him. But if you have to murder a relatively innocent young man to do it, well, that's too far. Like you're like, well, at what cost, justice? But again, that's last time I'll say this about Face, what side of Face is shown. But he says, you're a brave kid, ugly face. Then gun, perspective change, gun covers up ugly side, and you're seeing the handsome side. But I never could resist a 2-for-1 special. So that it's the handsome side expressing the, yeah, I'm going to murder you, kid line.
Yeah, these are things I didn't notice, and I'm producing this one, so I commend you, Henry.
It's really clever layout on it. But yeah, we've seen Batman crash through a lot of skylights. This isn't like the best one we've ever seen, but I'm glad they did it, and it does look good in the scale of this show.
I think I was just so used to the ugly side of the Two-Face saying the ugly things that I think I just visually assumed that's what was happening, but that's not what's happening for the most part.
So it at least shows that they had some smart layout in this, even if the animation is can't keep up with it.
So yeah, Batman arrives. He is not one step behind, thankfully, because he stops Two-Face from murdering a child. He disarms him. He punches him a few times as he goes for the gun, but Dent is able to fight back because he wallops Batman with the arm of a statue he broke earlier. And this is when Batman is seeing double here. Yes, 4 Harveys. We've already done the joke. We're doing it again because we can't help ourselves. And this is when Batman puts him in a chokehold from behind. Dent repeats the words Bruce told him earlier. Harvey Dent never quits. It's not in my nature. And this is when he's elbowing Batman in the stomach. So it's Batman learning, oh, you tortured this man and he needed more time to recuperate mentally. You just wanted to get to the bottom of things and you didn't care about his well-being at all.
Who really sent him over the edge? Was it the acid to the face or Bruce Wayne forcing him out before he was ready? Instead of, going to therapy perhaps, which obviously people did. You had to be court ordered to do that back then, as happened in earlier episodes of this season.
It was a sentence. It wasn't something you did to make yourself a better person and to get along with people better. So he gets free of Batman's grasp. He finds his gun only to realize that Thorne and his son have left the scene. And this is when he finally breaks down.
No! I had him! I had him! Why did you stop me? Why did you... You stopped me. Oh, thank God. You stopped me. I couldn't control him. You gotta lock me up. Please. Please. Before he hurts anyone else.
Your lawyer's here.
I don't have a lawyer.
And the reveal is it's Barbara Gordon. Gasp, because previously they were at odds with their take on justice, and now she's going to try to help him. And how will it end up? Well, Spoilers, Two-Face will not be appearing in season 2 of this series.
Isn't it great that they don't build a rogues gallery in this? And Catwoman could come back, but in her episode, she's just like, no, you're going to jail. The end. Like and Two-Face ends up dead. Clayface is not set up to be recurring.
Yeah.
Like these stories end with finality.
I feel that there could have been more done with Two-Face here, but because he's not a traditional flamboyant villain like the character we're used to, he's just a man who went on a rampage. There's no future for that. He does not want to become a crime lord or whatever Two-Face is into. I think Two-Face probably does big robberies or whatever. I forget what he's into. Yeah. It's just a man with mental illness. So I feel like they got what they could out of that for this version of the character.
Yeah, this Two-Face does not want to end up a gangster, which is what a Two-Face that you have longer-term plans for, that's usually where he ends up. He's like, oh, well, I killed the gangster who hurt me. I guess I'll just be a gangster myself and have my own crime sprees that I'm in charge of. I was thinking of this, Bob, where he breaks down. This is such a good point you had about since the first time we covered Batman together. So many Batman episodes end like this, of Batman looking down on a broken, sad person.
Yeah, actually, that was what I was going to say next. That's kind of why I chose this one. It's not the ending of the episode. It's the second to last scene, but this evokes so much of that old Batman show of how so many ended with Batman looking down at a crying criminal or watching them as they're full of regret in jail or in Arkham, just kind of keeping watch over them. And I feel like there is some growth of this character towards the end of the season where we're seeing a little more empathy in this Batman. We see he's learning that his tactics he's using so far have backfired. And he's reflecting on that as he sees his friend broken down here.
Yeah, it's cool to see Batman get to grow and change over the season, I think. But he just, when I saw him breaking down crying, I was like, wow, it's just like Bob said about the great insight you had when we first started doing Batman, of when he's watching over Mr. Freeze, who's just sobbing alone in his prison cell at the end of the episode, and it cuts to Batman silently watching outside.
He didn't hug all the villains, but he did hug Baby Doll, and she needed a hug, I think.
She needed it more than most, yeah. And when we did the Harley's Holiday, he's like, I had a bad day too. That's one of my favorite outlines Batman ever did on the show.
Yeah, and it's so different from this Batman. He would have nothing to say to her outside of, go back to jail, I hate you.
But I guess this ending also shows you the difference in the streaming era too, in that him looking over Two-Face like this would have just been the end, or just fade to black. But they have to have a cliffhanger to the next episode instead, right after.
Yeah, again, it's something I would rather not be part of the show. I realize it's obligatory for things like this, but I like the lighter touch. At best, it is 10% of any given episode, I think, and sometimes they ignore it entirely, it feels like.
Yeah, sometimes an episode does just end where it needs to, but I guess especially because this is the second to last episode, you made a good point earlier, this is really like a two-parter, 9 and 10, that they need a little handoff and to lead you to the finale.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess some final thoughts. I do like this one. I don't think it's my favorite, but again, I feel like it's their best. It reflects best what the series is trying to do, especially with the through line. And I'm really optimistic about the next season. Not to beat a dead horse, but God, I hope they get more money for animation, and I hope the writing stays very solid. But I also want to see what they're going to do with the Joker, because everybody wants to see that, and I hope it doesn't dominate the second set of episodes. I hope we still get a lot of fun one-offs. I hope we see new interpretations of old villains. There were some villains I had no idea existed in this order of episodes, including, is it Interrobang? Is that the villain who only speaks in onomatopoeia?
Yeah.
It's such a crazy, fun idea, and I love seeing it in this very somber series.
Yeah, that guy was such a deep pull. It took me a second to remember, oh, right, I remember that guy. He was from my era. He's I think a relatively, well, not relatively new, 30 years old. He's only 30 years old, this guy. But yeah, that was great. And that was the closest to Batman having a like a joke in the show. Like after he knocked out the guy, like he says bang or something. Like doesn't Batman do a sound effect for himself?
It's one of, I don't know, 2 one-liners he's allowed to have in this series. But yeah, I guess to wrap my end of things up, if the next season is like this but with Joker instead of Two-Face as the through line, I'll enjoy it. I'll enjoy it even more if they give it more money. But I am optimistic about enjoying the next chunk. Maybe we'll visit it again. I'm very excited that this is back, and it took so long to do, and I am optimistic about the future of this, and hopefully it's not flushed away after 2 orders like every other streaming series. I hope they put a little more into this and believe in it a little more.
I think it will really benefit from hopefully staying at the same streaming hosting service for 2 seasons in a row instead of having to be dumped in the middle. And yeah, I hope there's news soon of whoever they hire to replace Ed Brubaker. I guess my last thought of like, I can't not compare it to X-Men 97 as well, where this lost a head writer in between seasons, but for a good reason, because he's too busy and has a new show he sold because he's so successful. But that I'm interested to see where they can keep going with this, but they have laid such a great foundation, and I think they, I wonder if they will think they were too restrained and they're going to get more, exciting or colorful or whatever. But I would kind of prefer they keep a lot of this restraint and only adjust just a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, me too. I don't know if they can respond to feedback with their current production cycle, but I like what the track that they're on, and again, better animation, please. I'm begging you. That's all I'll say. Last time I'll mention it because the episode's over. But thank you for listening, everybody. If you want to support the show, get all the episodes ad-free and 1 week ahead of time, and then access nearly 200 bonus full-length episodes, head on over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. When you sign up, you'll immediately get everything that's been behind that paywall for the past 7+ years, including, like I said earlier, 20 episodes of Blab About Batman, the animated series. If you like us talking about this version of Batman, you'll love us talking about the older version of Batman. And we also have shows like Talking Futurama, Talking of the Hill, Talking Mission Hill, and Talking Critic. And for $5 a month, you get the whole back catalog and also new monthly episodes of both Talking Futurama and Talking of the Hill. That's all happening for $5 only at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And there is a $10 level as well. When you sign up for that, you get all the $5 stuff naturally, but then you also get one very, very long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
That's right, Bob. You're talking about the What a Cartoon Movie Podcast, our premium podcast for $10 and up subscribers who get an animated feature film discussion each month that is basically 3 podcasts long and 3 times longer than this, I should say. And we go super in-depth into a bunch of animated films. Our most recent Summer of the Disney Renaissance just completed. We covered Tarzan. You got to hear the free preview of that in your free feed. But if you want to hear the full thing of 5 hours of discussion of the Phil Collins Oscar-winning film, as well as the source material of Tarzan, you need to sign up at the $10 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And of course, if you like this Batman podcast, you're going to want to get access to that back catalog that's almost 6 years old. Our first What a Cartoon movie was Mask of the Phantasm. We did the Batman Superman World's Finest movie as well, and Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, 3 of the best animated Batman films ever made. You can hear all of that and all the $5 stuff if you are a subscriber at the $10 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpson.
And I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. And my other podcast is Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast all about old video games. You can find that wherever you find podcasts or go to patreon.com/Retronauts and sign up there for 2 full-length bonus episodes every month. And Henry, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter and other social media at HENEREYG or at Talking Henry on Instagram. Follow me and Bob on those places, and you should also be following the official Twitter account of this podcast network at Talk Simpsons Pod, at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. You stay up to date whenever new podcasts come out, whenever there's new stuff on the Patreon, whenever we've got live shows brewing. You will know about it if you follow at Talk Simpsons Pod on all of social media. And for an easy-to-explore list of all of our previously released free episodes of What a Cartoon Podcast and Talking Simpsons Podcast, head over to TalkingSimpsons.com.
Thanks so much for listening, folks. We'll see you again next time for an extended free preview of this month's episode of What a Cartoon Movie, all about B-Movie, and we'll see you then.
And then you turn to me and whisper, Bruce, I think these may be the wrong set of sisters. That was the last time I ever let you set us up on a blind double date. Come on, Harvey. You haven't even touched your food.
This was a mistake.
What? Why?
I can feel them staring.
These people are your friends. I dragged you here so you could see that. Your life isn't over, Harvey. It's just...
Harvey Dent. It's so good to see you out and about again.
Thanks, Sam. Nice to see you too. I bet that jerk's just eating this up. He's always been a jealous little worm. I'm sorry. That just came out.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.